I will snap your arm in half." My brother-in-law Trent sneered the words as he hurled a pair of heavy mixed martial arts gloves straight at my chest. He was fully prepared to hospitalize me right there on the patio, all while my terrified 7-year-old daughter watched. He thought he was dealing with a weak, defenseless single mother. He had no idea he had just threatened a combat veteran and woken up a special operations major. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. I am Maya, 33 years old, and for years I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. The Georgia heat was oppressive that afternoon, but the atmosphere on my mother Patricia upscale Buckhead patio was even more suffocating. It was her annual Juneteenth barbecue and event that was supposed to celebrate freedom and community. But in my family, it was just another stage for my mother to flaunt her wealth and her golden child, my older sister Tasha. Tasha had secured her place as the favorite by marrying Trent, a former college wrestler turned hedge fund executive who treated everyone around him like peasants. Trent was white wealthy and profoundly arrogant, a combination my status-obsessed mother worshipped. I had spent the afternoon keeping my head down and staying near the shallow end of the custom infinity pool, where my 7-year-old daughter Zuri was happily floating in her bright pink inner tube. The peace shattered the moment Trent's 10-year-old son decided the pool belonged solely to him. He charged at the edge of the water and deliberately shoved Zuri from behind, sending her tumbling out of her tube and into the deep end. The splash was loud, but the sudden silence from my daughter was deafening. She went under, swallowing water, her small hands thrashing blindly above the surface. Panic spiked through my veins, but my military training overrode the fear instantly. I did not scream. I moved. I hit the water fully clothed, grabbed Zuri by her waist and hauled her coughing and sputtering onto the expensive imported tile of the pool deck. She was shaking violently, clinging to my soaking wet blouse, crying out for me. I held her tight, rubbing her back until her breathing leveled out. Once I knew she was safe, I stood up and turned to Trent's son, who was standing a few feet away, laughing. I kept my voice perfectly level, but lined with absolute authority. "Do not ever put your hands on my daughter again. If you cannot play safely, you will not play in this pool at all." It was a standard parental correction, a basic boundary any reasonable adult would support. But Trent was not a reasonable adult. He had been holding court by the outdoor bar, boasting to his rich frat boy friends about his latest financial conquest. Hearing me discipline his son, he slammed his whiskey glass down so hard the crystal nearly shattered. He marched across the patio, his face flushed red with alcohol and misplaced ego. "Do not you dare talk to my son, you broke loser!" Trent bellowed, his voice carrying over the smooth jazz playing from the outdoor speakers. He was a large man built thick from his college wrestling days, and he used his physical size to intimidate people. He stopped just inches from my face, invading my personal space, trying to force me to step back. I did not move a single inch. "Your son just pushed Zuri into the deep end," I stated, maintaining unwavering eye contact. I corrected him because apparently no one else in this family will teach him basic discipline. Trent let out a harsh, mocking laugh that drew the attention of every guest in the yard. "Discipline," he scoffed loudly, looking me up and down, taking in my soaking wet clothes. "You think because you wear a cheap uniform and walk around an empty mall all day, you know something about discipline. You are nothing, Maya. You are a glorified rent-a-cop who relies on your mother for free food on holidays." My daughter was still crying, hiding behind my wet legs, her small fingers gripping the fabric of my trousers. The disrespect was a physical weight in the air, but I kept my breathing steady. I had faced hostile insurgents in the mountains of Afghanistan. A loud-mouthed finance bro in linen shorts did not even register on my threat radar. But before I could formulate a response that would not end with him unconscious on the pavement, my mother Patricia came storming out of the house. She was wearing a pristine white designer dress, her hair styled to perfection, her face contoured in a mask of absolute outrage. But that outrage was not directed at the man screaming at her daughter or the boy who had just nearly drowned her granddaughter. Her fury was pointed entirely at me. "Maya, apologize to Trent right now," Patricia demanded, her voice shrill and commanding. "You are ruining my Juneteenth celebration. You always have to be the center of attention and cause a scene." "Mom, He just threatened me after his son pushed Zuri into the deep end. I replied, my voice tight with disbelief. She is soaking wet and shaking. I do not care about your exaggerations, Patricia snapped, waving her manicured hand dismissively. Tasha married a vice president. Trent provides for this family. Hai is building a legacy. And what are you? You are a glorified mall security guard who cannot even buy a house in a decent neighborhood. Do not you dare embarrass us in front of these guests. You should be grateful we even let you through the gates today. The betrayal stung more than the insult. She knew I had served in the military. She knew I had deployed overseas. But to Patricia, military service was a poor person job, a failure to secure a wealthy husband like Tasha did. She had deliberately reduced my career to mall security to appease Trent's ego and to keep her country club friends from asking uncomfortable questions. Tasha sauntered over at that exact moment, a mimosa in her hand, looking like she had just stepped off a magazine cover. She stood next to her husband, linking her arm through his, sending me a look of pure, unadulterated smugness. You really are exhausting, Maya, Tasha drawled, taking a slow sip of her drink. Trent is just blowing off steam. You are so defensive. Maybe if you spent less time trying to be tough and more time acting like a normal woman, you would not be raising that child by yourself in a rented apartment. Trent, emboldened by his wife and mother-in-law, unwavering support, took a step back and walked over to a nearby gym bag resting on a lounger. He had brought his gear to show off to a personal trainer he had invited to the party. He reached into the bag, pulled out a pair of heavy mixed martial arts sparring gloves, and turned back to face me. You want to act like a tough guy, Maya, Trent sneered, his chest puffed out with toxic bravado. You want to police my family. Let us see how tough you are. He hurled the heavy leather gloves straight at my chest. I will snap your arm in half, sign a waiver, and step on the grass with me right now. I will put you in the hospital in front of your kid and teach you exactly where you belong in the food chain. Zuri whimpered, pressing her face into the back of my knees. The entire patio had gone dead silent. The guests were staring, waiting to see if I would cry, if I would run away humiliated, if I would apologize to keep the peace. They expected a weak, defenseless mother broken by poverty and familial rejection. They expected me to lower my head and walk away in shame. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I did not flinch when the gloves flew through the air. My reflexes, honed by years of elite combat training, kicked in instantly. I reached out and caught the heavy leather gloves mid-flight, the smack of the impact echoing sharply in the quiet yard. I held them for a brief second, feeling the weight of the leather, the weight of their combined arrogance. I turned my head slowly, looking at the massive custom-built charcoal grill smoking a few feet away. Without breaking eye contact with Trent, I extended my arm and casually dropped his expensive custom MMA gloves directly onto the glowing red-hot coals. The smell of burning leather and melting foam rose immediately into the humid Georgia air. Trent's mouth fell open in shock. Tasha gasped, spilling her mimosa on her designer shoes. Patricia's face turned an alarming shade of purple as she struggled to find words to condemn my blatant disrespect. I stepped forward, closing the distance between Trent and myself until I was standing well within his striking range. I kept my posture relaxed, my hands loose and ready at my sides, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm that carried perfectly over the crackling of his burning gloves. You have exactly 24 hours to apologize to my daughter Trent, I said, enunciating every single syllable with chilling precision. If you do not, I will not just break your arm. I will dismantle your entire life piece by piece until you have nothing left but the ashes. Trent tried to laugh it off, trying to maintain his tough guy persona for his friends, but I saw the brief flicker of genuine hesitation in his eyes. He opened his mouth to insult me again, but I did not give him the chance. I turned around, scooped my soaking wet daughter into my arms, and walked straight through the pristine house, leaving a trail of pool water across my mother-expensive hardwood floors. I did not look back as I walked out the front door and secured Zuri in her car seat. I drove away from the sprawling Buckhead estate, feeling a cold, calculating focus settle over my mind. They thought they had won. They thought they could bully me into submission and laugh about it over expensive wine. But the clock was officially ticking. You have exactly 24 hours to apologize to my daughter Trent, or I will not just break your arm. I will dismantle your entire life piece by piece until you have nothing left but the ashes." The words hung in the suffocating Georgia heat. For a fraction of a second, the arrogant smirk on Trent's face slipped. I saw the exact moment his alcohol-fueled bravado faltered, realizing he was standing entirely too close to a woman who did not possess a single ounce of fear. But Trent was a man who lived for an audience. He glanced over his shoulder at his wealthy hedge fund friends who were staring at us from the outdoor bar. He could not afford to look weak in front of his peers. Trent forced a loud, barking laugh that sounded like a tractor engine failing to turn over. He took a step back, crossing his thick arms over his chest. "You are going to dismantle my life." He scoffed, looking me up and down with exaggerated pity. "You cannot even afford to buy your daughter a new swimsuit, Maya. You are a joke." Tasha clacked forward in her designer wedges, grabbing Trent by the bicep. She looked at me with a mixture of disgust and absolute superiority. "You are completely delusional, Maya." Tasha sneered, her voice loud enough for every guest on the patio to hear. "You live in a rented box and drive a car that belongs in a scrapyard. My husband manages billions of dollars. You are a broke single mother trying to sound like an action movie star because you spent a few years playing soldier in the desert. It is beyond embarrassing. Take your kid and get out of my mother's house before Trent calls the actual police to deal with you." "My mother." Patricia stood behind them, nodding in agreement, her face pinched with disapproval. She was terrified that my lack of submission would somehow tarnish her flawless reputation among the Buckhead elite. I looked at the three of them, a trinity of superficiality and misplaced arrogance. Engaging them further in front of a crowd of strangers was a tactical error. You never fight an enemy on the terrain they have prepared. You force them onto a battlefield of your own making. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I simply turned my back on them, demonstrating the ultimate display of disrespect in combat, showing an enemy you do not consider them a threat. I scooped Zuri into my arms, holding her wet, shivering body against my chest, and walked straight through the sprawling mansion. I ignored the gasps and whispers of my mother's high society friends as my wet shoes squeaked across the imported Italian marble floors. The drive back to our apartment was quiet. Zuri sat in the back seat, clutching her damp towel, staring out the window. I kept my eyes on the road, analyzing the situation with the cold, calculated detachment the military had drilled into me. I lived in a modest two-bedroom apartment in a quiet, working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Atlanta. Tasha and my mother assumed I lived there because my security guard salary could not afford anything better. They did not know that I chose that specific building because it was unassuming, secure, and off the radar. It allowed me to pour every single dollar of my military pension and private consulting fees into building my global tactical firm. I had spent the last 5 years creating an empire in the shadows. I was not broke. I was simply invisible by choice. "Mommy, are you mad at me?" Zuri asked softly from the back seat, her voice trembling. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, my heart contracting. I pulled the SUV over to the shoulder of the road, put it in park, and turned around to face her. "I am not mad at you, baby." I promised, keeping my tone warm and steady. "You did nothing wrong. That boy pushed you and his father was a bully. We do not tolerate bullies. We stand up to them, always." Zuri nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "Are we going to see Grandma again?" "Not for a while," I answered truthfully. I got us home, bathed Zuri, and put her to bed early. I spent the rest of the evening in my home office, sipping black coffee and running risk assessments. I knew Trent. He was a man driven by ego and fragile masculinity. I had humiliated him in front of his investors and his wife. He would not let the 24-hour ultimatum pass without attempting to strike first. I just needed to wait and see what angle of attack he would choose. The retaliation hit exactly at 7 in the morning. I was in the kitchen pouring my first cup of coffee when I heard the sharp, heavy sound of paper being stapled to my front door, followed by heavy footsteps rushing down the exterior hallway. I set my mug down, walked to the door, and pulled it open. Taped squarely at eye level was a bright yellow legal notice. It was a formal 48-hour notice to vacate. I pulled the paper off the wood and scanned the legal jargon. It stated that the apartment complex had been acquired late last night by a new property management group. The new owners were invoking a structural renovation clause to immediately terminate all month-to-month leases. My lease had shifted to month 3 weeks ago while I was finalizing the purchase of a new home. The eviction notice was completely legal, but the timing was mathematically impossible for a standard real estate transaction. I walked back into my office and woke up my encrypted laptop. I did not bother calling the leasing office. I went straight to the source. Using my tactical firm's proprietary tracing software, I ran the name of the new property management group listed on the eviction notice. It took me less than 4 minutes to peel back the corporate layers. The property group was registered to an LLC in Delaware. That LLC was owned by a holding company in the Cayman Islands. And that holding company was a subsidiary asset managed entirely by Trent's primary hedge fund. Trent had literally bought my entire apartment building overnight, using his corporate slush funds, just so he could legally throw my daughter and me out onto the street. It was an astonishing display of financial power meant to completely crush my spirit and prove that I was nothing more than an insect he could squash with his wallet. He wanted me homeless. He wanted me panicked. I wanted me crawling back to my mother begging for a place to stay so he could stand over me and force me to apologize. My cell phone vibrated on the desk. The caller ID displayed Trent's name. I stared at the screen, letting it ring 3 times before I calmly pressed accept. I did not say hello. I just listened. "Good morning, Maya." Trent's voice boomed through the speaker, dripping with absolute triumph. He sounded like he was smiling around a mouthful of teeth. "How is the weather in the unemployment line today? Did you get my little yellow present on your door?" "I bought a residential building just to terminate one lease," I stated, keeping my voice completely devoid of emotion. "I bought a building because I can." Trent sneered, his arrogance amplifying. "I told you yesterday you do not know how the real world works. You think you can threaten me. You think you can embarrass me in front of my family and my business partners. I control capital, Maya. I control real estate. I control whether you and your brat sleep with a roof over your heads tonight. You have exactly 48 hours to pack up your army surplus junk and get off my property. If you are not gone by Wednesday morning, I will have the sheriffs drag you out, and I will personally call Child Protective Services to report a homeless, unemployed veteran neglecting her kid." He paused, waiting for me to scream, waiting for me to beg. I gave him nothing but steady breathing. "You should have known your place." Trent continued, his tone turning vicious. "Now you are going to learn what happens when you disrespect the people who actually run this city." He hung up the phone. A second later, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Tasha. I opened the message. It was a perfectly filtered selfie of her and Trent sitting at a high-end brunch spot sipping expensive mimosas. The caption underneath the photo was crystal clear. "This is what happens when you disrespect real power, Maya. Next time, know your place." I set the phone down on the desk. They thought they had backed me into a corner. They thought stripping away a rented apartment would leave me destitute and broken. They expected me to scramble to pack cardboard boxes while crying over my bank account. They had no idea that my firm generated more revenue in a single fiscal quarter than Trent's hedge fund handled in a year. They did not know that the woman they were trying to render homeless had a Rolodex of federal contacts, government contractors, and elite cyber warfare specialists on speed dial. Trent wanted to use his wealth as a weapon to attack my child's stability. He had officially crossed the line from a domestic nuisance to a hostile threat. I picked up my phone, navigating past Tasha's ridiculous text message. I did not bother packing a single cardboard box. Instead, I opened my secure communications app and typed a brief message to my chief of operations. "Initiate the Buckhead relocation protocol. Send the transport team." I locked my phone and took a sip of my coffee. It was still warm. Trent wanted a war of assets. I was going to show him exactly what real power looked like. I did not waste a single second tearing apart my life to satisfy Trent's ego. I walked into Zura's bedroom and pulled a single black duffel bag from the top of her closet. I packed her favorite books, her school uniforms, and the stuffed bear she had slept with since she was a toddler. Zuri sat on the edge of her bed, watching me with wide, observant eyes. "Are we poor now, Mommy?" she asked, her small voice barely above a whisper. "Aunt Tasha said we were poor and that Uncle Trent was going to make us sleep outside." I stopped packing and knelt in front of her. I took her small hands in mine, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "We are not poor, Zuri," I said firmly, ensuring my voice carried absolute certainty. "Your aunt and uncle are confused about what real wealth looks like. We are just upgrading our perimeter. We are moving to a castle." A loud, aggressive pounding on the front door interrupted us. I stood up, my posture instantly shifting from mother to soldier. I walked down the short hallway and opened the door. Standing on my welcome mat was a young man in a cheap suit holding a clipboard. He had the arrogant smirk of someone who thought he was delivering the final blow on behalf of a powerful boss. "Trent sent me," the young man said, puffing out his chest. "I am the new property manager. The eviction notice says 48 hours, but Trent wants you out by noon. He said if you do not hand over the keys right now, he is going to have your car towed from the lot." I looked at my watch. It was exactly 8 in the morning. I looked back at the property manager. "I am leaving right now," I said, my voice deadpan. "But you are going to want to step back." The manager scoffed, planting his feet firmly on my welcome mat. "I am not stepping anywhere until you hand over the keys. Trent said you would try to cause a problem." I did not argue with him. I simply looked past his shoulder toward the street. The low rumble of heavy engines vibrated through the apartment complex. 4 matte black armored Cadillac Escalades turned into the parking lot, moving with synchronized military precision. They completely blocked the street, sealing off all exits. The doors of the vehicles opened simultaneously. 12 men and women stepped out, all dressed in tailored dark suits with discreet earpieces and the unmistakable posture of elite combat veterans. The property manager slowly turned his head, his confident smirk dissolving into pure panic. He watched as my chief of security, David, a 6'4" former Navy SEAL, walked directly up the stairs to my floor. David did not even look at the property manager. He stepped right into his personal space, forcing the young man to stumble backward against the railing. Major David said, his voice a deep, gravelly rumble, as he stood at attention in front of my door. "The transport team is secure. The perimeter is locked. We are ready for extraction." I nodded. "Take my daughter's bags. We are leaving." David signaled 2 operatives who moved past the terrified property manager to grab the duffel bags from my living room. I walked out holding Zuri by the hand. The property manager pressed himself flat against the brick wall, his clipboard shaking in his grip. I tossed my apartment keys into the air, and they clattered onto the concrete right at his feet. "Tell Trent he can keep the security deposit," I said, without breaking my stride. David escorted Zuri and me to the lead Escalade, opening the heavy ballistic steel door. We climbed into the back seat, and the convoy immediately rolled out of the parking lot, moving seamlessly into the heavy Atlanta morning traffic. I leaned back against the dark leather seats, watching the working-class neighborhood fade away in the rearview mirror. My mother and Tasha genuinely believed I was a struggling mall security guard. They had spent years mocking my practical boots, my dark clothes, and my refusal to discuss my income at family dinners. Patricia constantly compared my life to Tasha and her flashy vice president husband. What my family did not know was that my silence was mandated by federal non-disclosure agreements. When I left Special Operations, I did not take a job at a shopping mall. I founded Obsidian Shield, a global tactical consulting and private security firm. We provided high-threat protection for visiting foreign diplomats, secure transport for high-value assets, and cybersecurity infrastructure for multinational banks. My firm generated more revenue in a single fiscal quarter than Trent's hedge fund handled in an entire year. I simply chose not to broadcast my wealth. Real power does not need to wear designer labels or scream for attention at a backyard barbecue. Real power operates in the shadows. The convoy merged onto the highway, heading straight for the wealthiest zip code in the city. We bypassed the sprawling suburban mansions where my mother and sister lived to keep up appearances. Instead, the Escalades pulled into the underground private garage of a gleaming glass skyscraper in the heart of Buckhead. This was not a rental. I owned the entire top floor. David escorted us to the private elevator, which required a biometric retina scan to operate. The steel doors slid open silently, depositing us directly into the foyer of a $5 million high-security penthouse. floor-to-ceiling ballistic glass windows offered a sweeping panoramic view of the entire Atlanta skyline. The floors were heated imported stone, and the walls were lined with original modern art. It was a fortress disguised as a luxury suite. Zuri gasped, dropping her small backpack on the floor. She ran to the massive windows, pressing her hands against the glass. "You were right, Mommy," she whispered, her eyes wide with amazement. "It really is a castle. Go pick out your new bedroom, baby," I said, smiling warmly at her. "All your toys from storage are already set up in the room down the hall." As Zuri sprinted down the corridor, exploring her massive new space, my smile vanished. The mother disappeared, and the CEO took over. Trent wanted to play a game of assets and intimidation. He wanted to use his hedge fund to leave me homeless and broken. He had made the catastrophic mistake of confusing my silence for weakness. I walked into my private office at the end of the hall. The room was soundproofed and equipped with a dedicated secure server independent from the building's main grid. I sat down in the leather executive chair and woke up my encrypted laptop. 3 monitors flared to life, casting a cool blue glow across my desk. I pulled up the corporate structure of Trent's hedge fund, mapping out his shell companies, his offshore accounts, and his primary domestic holdings. Trent was a sloppy, arrogant investor. He relied on aggressive tactics and illegal insider networking to maintain his wealth. His entire financial empire was a house of cards built on federal wire fraud and shady regulatory practices. I thought he was a genius, but my cyber intelligence team had mapped his vulnerabilities months ago just as a routine background check. I picked up my secure phone and dialed a direct line to Washington. The phone rang twice before a sharp professional voice answered. "Elias speaking." "Elias, it is Maya," I said, leaning back in my chair. The formal tone on the other end instantly dropped, replaced by deep, genuine warmth. Major Elias breathed a sigh of relief. "It is good to hear your voice. I still owe you my life for that extraction in Kabul. You know I am always waiting for you to call in that favor. What do you need?" Elias was not just an old friend from my deployment days. He was now a senior director at the Federal Auditing Agency, overseeing domestic hedge fund compliance. He had the authority to freeze assets across state lines with a single signature. "I need you to look into a specific portfolio." "Elias," I said, my eyes tracking the financial data scrolling across my monitors. "I am sending you a secure file right now. It contains a detailed map of a hedge fund operating out of Atlanta. Look closely at their recent shell company acquisitions and offshore wire transfers. You will find enough regulatory violations to trigger an immediate federal freeze on all their primary accounts." Elias paused, clearly reviewing the incoming data on his end. I heard the rapid clicking of his keyboard. "Who is the managing director of this fund?" he asked, his voice shifting back into a sharp professional gear. "His name is Trent," I replied, my voice cold and precise. "He likes to buy residential buildings to illegally evict single mothers. I think it is time someone evicted him from his own bank accounts." "Consider it done," Major Elias said. "By noon today, his entire fund will be locked down, pending a full federal investigation. He will not be able to buy a cup of coffee without my authorization." I thanked Elias and ended the call, setting the phone down on my desk. I looked out the massive windows at the sprawling city below. Trent had given me 24 hours to pack up my life. I had just dismantled his entire financial reality in less than 20 minutes. The trap was set, and the first domino was about to fall. I watched the monitors in my Buckhead penthouse as the federal strike hits. My cyber intelligence team provides real-time telemetry on Trent's financial network. At exactly 12:45 in the afternoon, the screen flashes a cascade of red notifications. Elias did not waste a single minute. The federal wire fraud flag triggers an automatic lock on Trent's primary hedge fund accounts, his offshore Cayman subsidiaries, and every domestic shell company tied to his social security number. I take a slow sip of my coffee, watching the digital empire of an arrogant bully evaporate into thin air. I need to retrieve Zuri's custom asthma inhaler from my mother's pool cabana. I had left it behind during our rapid departure yesterday. I leave Zuri safe in the penthouse with my security detail and drive my armored SUV back to the sprawling estate. Patricia opens the front door before I even ring the bell. She is wearing a silk lounge set, her face pulled tight in a scowl. She does not ask where Zuri and I slept last night. She does not ask if we are safe. She immediately crosses her arms and blocks the doorway. Tasha told me Trent had your apartment building bought and your lease terminated. Patricia says, her voice dripping with condescending satisfaction. I hope you enjoyed sleeping in your cheap little car, Maya. This is exactly what I warned you about. You bite the hand that feeds you, and you end up on the street. If you walk into my house right now, you are going to sit in the living room, wait for Trent to arrive, and beg him on your hands and knees to give you your apartment back. I step right past her into the foyer, ignoring her demands entirely. I am just here for Zurus inhaler, I say, keeping my stride measured and calm. Before Patricia can follow me to the patio, the heavy oak front door violently swings open. Trent bursts into the foyer. He looks like he just survived a minor explosion. His custom-tailored Italian suit jacket is crumpled in his fist, his expensive silk tie is ripped open, and his face is a blotchy, dangerous shade of crimson. He is sweating profusely, pacing the marble floor like a trapped animal, violently stabbing his finger into his cell phone screen. It declined. Trent screams into the phone, spittle flying from his lips. What do you mean the federal government flagged my accounts? I was sitting at a table at a high-end steakhouse with 3 multi-million-dollar investors. The waiter brought over the machine and my black card was declined. Do you understand the humiliation? Fix it right now or you are all fired. He hurls the phone against the wall. The device shatters into pieces across the expensive imported tile. Patricia immediately rushes forward, her hands fluttering anxiously around her wealthy son-in-law. She treats this grown man throwing a violent tantrum with more tenderness than she has ever shown her own flesh and blood. Trent, sweetie, what is wrong? Patricia coos, reaching out to smooth his wrinkled shirt. Was there a bank error? Tasha is at the spa, but I can call her. Do you need a glass of water? Maya, go to the kitchen and fetch Trent some ice water right now. I stop at the edge of the hallway, crossing my arms. Get it yourself, I say, my voice perfectly flat. Trent snaps his head up, his bloodshot eyes locking onto me. He is completely unraveling, stripped of the financial armor that makes him feel like a god among men. He does not suspect that I am the architect of his current nightmare. He still firmly believes I am a broke, destitute single mother who spent the night sleeping in a rusted sedan. Seeing me standing calmly in the foyer while his world burns provides him with the perfect target to regain his shattered sense of control. You, Trent sneers, marching toward me with heavy, aggressive steps. You are still here infesting this house. Tasha told me your lease was officially terminated this morning. Where did you sleep last night, Maya? A homeless shelter. Patricia steps right up beside him, nodding in agreement. I told her she needs to beg you for forgiveness, Trent. She is stubborn and ungrateful, but she has nowhere else to go. Trent lets out a harsh, cruel laugh that lacks any real amusement. His desperation is palpable, and he decides to use his favorite weapon against the woman he views as the weakest person in the room. He reaches into his leather briefcase, which he dropped on the entryway table, and violently yanks out a thick stack of legal documents. He slaps the papers forcefully against his open palm. You think you can disrespect me on this property and walk away? Trent hisses, stepping so close I can smell the sour stench of whiskey and panic radiating from his pores. I had a very interesting conversation with a family court judge this morning, Maya. My lawyers are incredibly efficient. I look down at the documents, but I do not flinch. What is that, Trent? Are you suing me for the cost of your burnt gloves? This is an emergency custody petition, Trent says, a vicious, victorious smile twisting his red face. I am filing to take Zuri away from you permanently. The air in the foyer suddenly turns freezing cold. I maintain my composure, but the special operations training kicks into high gear, analyzing the immediate threat he just presented to my family. You are filing for custody of my daughter, I ask, my voice dropping an octave, dangerous and quiet. On what grounds? On the grounds that you are a homeless, unstable, and violent combat veteran. Trent spits out, waving the papers inches from my face. You have no permanent residence. You have a low-paying security job. You exhibit aggressive tendencies that make you an unfit mother. Tasha and I have a stable, multi-million-dollar household. We can give Zuri the life she actually deserves, instead of forcing her to live in squalor with a damaged soldier. I glance at Patricia, expecting at least a shred of maternal instinct to override her obsession with wealth. Instead, my mother lifts her chin and looks me dead in the eye. I already signed an affidavit supporting Trent's petition. Maya Patricia says, her tone laced with absolute betrayal. It is for the best. Tasha and Trent can give Zuri a real life surrounded by the right kind of people. You are too rough, too damaged by whatever you did in the military. You cannot provide for her. My own mother prioritized a white, arrogant hedge fund manager over her own black daughter and granddaughter. She willingly signed a legal document to strip my child away from me, just to stroke the ego of the man she thought was funding their luxurious lifestyle. They honestly believed this piece of paper was a death sentence for my motherhood. Trent steps back, a look of supreme confidence temporarily masking his financial panic. He thinks he holds my entire beating heart in his hands. I am not a monster, Maya, Trent says, dripping with fake magnanimity. I will give you a choice. I am heading to my private mixed martial arts gym right now to blow off some steam while my bank fixes this ridiculous federal glitch. You are going to meet me there in 1 hour. You are going to sign the surrender documents, quietly relinquishing your parental rights to Tasha and me. If you sign them, I will generously offer to pay for a cheap studio apartment for you so you are not sleeping on the street. He points a thick, heavy finger at my chest. But if you do not show up and sign those papers, I will take this petition to a judge tomorrow morning. I will drag your military record through the mud. I will ruin you in family court, and I will make sure you never see your daughter again. Do you understand me, mall cop? I look at Trent. I look at the legal papers trembling in his sweaty hand. I look at my mother, who has just cemented her place on the wrong side of the impending war. They have no idea that the federal glitch destroying Trent's hedge fund is just the opening salvo. They have no idea that the woman they are threatening has the power to erase them from the map. I will be at the gym. Trent. I say, my voice remarkably steady, utterly devoid of the fear he is desperately trying to provoke. Have the papers ready. I turn on my heel and walk out the front door, leaving the custom asthma inhaler behind. I do not need it anymore. I do not need anything from this house ever again. I climb into the back of my armored SUV and look at my security detail. We are going to make a quick stop, I tell my driver, pulling out my encrypted phone to call my corporate legal team. Tell the lawyers to draft the hostile takeover documents immediately. Trent wants me to sign something in a fighting ring. I am going to give him exactly what he asked for. I lean back against the leather seat of my armored Escalade as it merges seamlessly onto the highway. My encrypted phone vibrates in my hand. It is a voicemail from my mother, Patricia. I press play and lift the speaker to my ear, keeping my eyes fixed on the Atlanta skyline. Maya, it is your mother. Trent told me you are being stubborn. I already signed the affidavit supporting his emergency custody petition. It is for the best, Maya. Tasha and Trent can give Zuri a real life. They have the resources, the right connections, the right zip code. You are bouncing around playing security guard and acting like a thug. Zuri needs stability. She needs to be around success. Sign the papers and do not make this harder than it has to be. The message ends. I do not delete it. I save it to a secure cloud drive. That voice recording is not just a mother betraying her daughter. It is a legally binding admission of collusion. Patricia genuinely believes that Trent's white skin and hedge fund money make him a superior parent to a highly decorated black combat veteran. She is willing to rip her own granddaughter away from her mother just to secure her standing at Tasha's country club dinners. It is a level of internalized hatred and class obsession that I stopped trying to cure years ago. Now I am just going to exploit it. My screen lights up again. A text from Trent. He drops a pin for an address in Midtown. Apex Martial Arts Club. Meet me here in 20 minutes. Sign the surrender documents or I file Patricia affidavit at the courthouse tomorrow morning. I will make sure the judge knows exactly how unstable you are. I dial my chief corporate counsel, Julian. He has been working closely with my acquisitions team since I gave the green light an hour ago. Julian, tell me we are locked and loaded. We are locked. Major Julian replies, his voice crisp and professional over the secure line. Trent's primary fund was already massively over-leveraged. When the federal freeze hit his accounts this morning, his creditors panicked. We swooped in through an Obsidian Shield subsidiary and bought up 51% of his outstanding corporate debt. We own his margin calls. We own his collateral. He is completely financially cornered, and he does not even know it yet. Print the takeover documents, I instruct him. Bring them to Apex Martial Arts Club in Midtown. We are doing a live execution. I tell my driver to reroute. I look down at my outfit. I am not dressed for a gym. I am wearing a tailored charcoal Tom Ford suit and a pair of black stiletto heels. It is the uniform of a corporate executioner. I do not bother changing. Trent wants to intimidate me in his element. I am going to show him that my element is wherever I decide to stand. The Escalade pulls up to the curb outside Apex. It is one of those ultra-exclusive high-end gyms where wealthy finance executives pay thousands of dollars a month to punch heavy bags and pretend they are dangerous. The front windows are tinted glass. The lobby smells like eucalyptus and expensive protein powder. My security detail steps out first, securing the perimeter before opening my door. I step onto the pavement, adjusting my cuffs. Julian arrives in a black sedan a moment later, gripping a thick leather portfolio. "You have the paperwork?" I ask Julian. Every signature line highlighted, he confirms, matching my stride as we walk through the heavy glass doors. The receptionist tries to stop us, but my security detail simply steps in front of the desk, forming an immovable wall. I walk straight past the turnstiles and into the main training area. It is a massive warehouse space with exposed brick walls, pristine grappling mats, and an elevated boxing ring in the center. The room is filled with affluent men in expensive workout gear grappling and hitting pads. The heavy thud of fists against leather echoes through the cavernous space. I spot Trent immediately. He is inside the elevated ring, shirtless, wearing expensive custom fighting shorts. He has a personal trainer holding focus mitts for him. Trent is sweating heavily, throwing sloppy but powerful punches, grunting loudly with every strike. He has an audience. 3 of his hedge fund buddies are leaning against the ropes, drinking water and cheering him on. Trent is entirely in his element, surrounded by men who stroke his ego and validate his aggressive masculinity. I do not wait at the edge of the mat. I walk, my stiletto heels clicking sharply against the polished concrete floor, cutting straight through the crowd. The sound of my heels is sharp and rhythmic, a metronome of impending ruin. Men stop their workouts to stare. I ignore them all. I walk directly to the steps of the elevated ring and stop. Trent throws a heavy right hook into the trainer's mitt, then pauses, catching sight of me out of the corner of his eye. He lowers his hands, panting heavily, a wide, arrogant smirk spreading across his sweaty face. He waves the trainer off and struts over to the ropes, looking down at me. "Well, well," Trent sneers, leaning over the top rope, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel. "I did not think you would actually show up. I thought you would be busy digging through trash cans looking for a place to sleep tonight." His friends chuckle, nudging each other. "I received your text, Trent," I say, my voice carrying clearly over the ambient noise of the gym. "You wanted to discuss custody of my daughter." "I do not want to discuss anything," Maya, Trent barks, his amusement vanishing, replaced by a hard, aggressive glare. "I am telling you how this is going to go. Your mother signed the affidavit. She testified that you are a violent, unstable combat veteran who cannot provide a safe environment for a child. I have the best family lawyers in the state on retainer. If we go to court, they will rip your life apart. They will put you on the stand and make you look like a deranged soldier." He points a taped finger at my face. "You are going to take the pen from your little lawyer friend right there," Trent commands, gesturing toward Julian. "You are going to sign the parental surrender documents, turning primary custody over to Tasha and me. You will get supervised visitation every other weekend if you behave. If you do exactly what I say, I will call off the dogs. I will even rent you a cheap apartment so you are not sleeping in your car." I look up at him. He is breathing hard, high on adrenaline and the false security of his wealth. He genuinely believes he has orchestrated the perfect checkmate. He thinks the threat of losing my child will make me drop to my knees and surrender my entire existence to his control. He wants me to break in front of his friends. He wants to witness my complete subjugation. I turn to Julian, who is standing calmly beside me. I hold out my hand. Julian opens the leather portfolio and places a thick stack of pristine legal documents into my palm. I hold the documents up, looking back at Trent. "I brought the paperwork you requested, Trent." I say, my voice perfectly level, absolutely void of any fear or submission. but I am not signing them from down here. If you want my signature, you are going to have to look me in the eye. Trent laughs, a harsh, booming sound that echoes off the brick walls. He thinks I am trying to salvage my pride. He thinks stepping into his territory is a desperate attempt to look strong before I capitulate. You want to step into the ring with me, Maya, Trent mocks, opening the ropes wide. Come on up. Let me show you what a real man looks like. Do not trip in those ridiculous shoes. I hand the portfolio back to Julian. I unbutton my tailored charcoal blazer and hand that to him as well. I am wearing a crisp white silk blouse underneath. I do not take off my heels. I walk up the 3 small stairs and step through the ropes, entering the padded mat of the ring. Trent steps forward, closing the distance between us. He towers over me, using his physical bulk to cast a shadow across my face. His friends lean closer, watching eagerly, expecting a verbal beatdown. Trent expects me to tremble. He expects me to reach for a pen and sign away my right to be a mother. He is gravely mistaken. I did not come here to surrender. I came here to execute a corporate slaughter, and I am going to enjoy every single second of it. The air in the gym is thick with the smell of sweat and overpriced cologne. I stand perfectly still in the center of the elevated ring. The padded mat gives slightly beneath the sharp points of my stiletto heels, but my core is stabilized. I have operated on moving helicopters and slick ship decks. A stationary boxing ring is child's play. Trent circles me like a clumsy predator. His chest is heaving heavily from his workout and his skin is slick with perspiration. He rolls his shoulders, trying to make himself look larger, wider, more intimidating. To the untrained eye, he is a massive wall of muscle. To a combat veteran, he is a walking collection of exposed targets and terrible balance. He keeps his chin too high. He leads with his dominant foot, leaving his center of gravity entirely compromised. He looks past me toward his group of wealthy hedge fund friends leaning against the ropes. They are snickering, holding their water bottles like beer cans at a fraternity party. They are thoroughly enjoying the spectacle of their friend putting an uppity black woman in her place. I am not one of those desert insurgents you fought, Maya. Trent mocks, his voice booming across the gym. He smirks, showing off for his audience. You spent a few years kicking in doors for government pay, and now you think you are tough. You are nothing but an angry single mother who does not know how the real world operates. You want to keep your kid, sign the papers, or step up and let me show you what a real man can do. I do not blink. I do not shift my weight. I just look at him. You are right, Trent. I say, my voice calm, cutting through the ambient noise of the gym like a scalpel. You are not an insurgent. Insurgents have conviction. Insurgents know how to fight. You are just a fragile man who relies on his bank account to hide his profound weakness. The snickering from his friends stops instantly. The insult hits Trent exactly where he is most vulnerable. His ego. His face flushes a dark, dangerous red. The muscles in his thick neck bulge. He forgets that there is a crowd watching. He forgets that he is dealing with a woman. He only sees a threat to his absolute authority that must be physically crushed. Trent lunges. He throws a heavy, sweeping right hook aimed directly at my jaw. He puts his entire body weight behind the punch, intending to knock me unconscious and drag my limp hand across his custody documents. It is a slow, telegraphed strike driven by pure, unfiltered rage. My response takes exactly 2.4 seconds. Time dilates. My training takes over, moving my body with lethal, autonomous precision. 0.5 seconds. I do not step backward to retreat. I step diagonally forward inside the arc of his swinging arm. I use my left forearm to parry his wrist, deflecting the heavy blow harmlessly past my ear. The momentum of his own punch pulls him forward, throwing his center of gravity completely off balance. 1.2 seconds. I pivot on my stiletto, driving my right palm sharply into the hinge of his extended elbow. I grip his wrist with my left hand, twisting it outward. The human body is a machine, and every machine has breaking points. I apply precise, calculated torque against the natural rotation of his joint. 1.8 seconds. Trent's forward momentum, combined with my leverage, creates an inescapable lock. I step my right foot behind his lead knee, hooking his leg. I drop my center of mass, executing a flawless Krav Maga takedown. 2.4 seconds. Trent slams onto the mat with a sickening thud. The breath leaves his lungs in a violent rush. Before he can even process that he is falling, I apply maximum downward pressure on his trapped arm. There is a loud, distinct pop as his shoulder dislocates from the socket. A high-pitched, agonizing scream rips from Trent's throat. It is not the roar of a tough guy. It is the raw, unfiltered shriek of a man who has never experienced real physical trauma in his entire sheltered life. He writhes on the mat, his face contorted in absolute agony, his good hand clutching at his ruined shoulder. I release his arm and stand up smoothly. I smooth a minor crease in my white silk blouse. I am not breathing hard. My heart rate has not elevated. I did not even break a sweat. The entire gym goes dead silent. The thud of heavy bags stops. The whirring of treadmills seems to fade away. Dozens of wealthy, arrogant men are frozen in place, staring at the ring in sheer disbelief. Trent's hedge fund buddies, who were laughing just 3 seconds ago, are now gripping the ropes with wide, terrified eyes. Their invincible alpha male is sobbing on the floor, reduced to a helpless heap by a woman in a tailored suit and high heels. I look down at Trent. My expression remains completely devoid of pity. "You lead with your chin, Trent," I say quietly. "It makes you an incredibly easy target." Trent groans, thrashing his legs against the mat. He looks up at me with tears of pain streaming down his red face. His arrogance is gone, replaced by a feral, panicked fury. He realizes he cannot beat me physically, so he instantly reverts to his only other weapon, the legal system. He looks frantically toward the edge of the ring where his high-priced family lawyer is standing, completely paralyzed by shock. "Get the papers!" Trent screams, his voice cracking from the intense pain in his shoulder. "Give her the papers right now. Do not let her leave until she signs them. I am going to take your daughter Maya. I am going to press assault charges and throw you in a federal cage. Give her the pen." Trent's slick lawyer snaps out of his daze. He scrambles up the steps of the ring, his hands shaking. He looks at me, terrified that I might dislocate his shoulder too. He does not dare step through the ropes. He stands on the outer apron holding a gold pen. My corporate counsel, Julian, steps calmly up to the ring, right beside Trent's lawyer. Julian is completely unfazed by the violence. He has worked with me for 5 years. He knows exactly how I handle hostile negotiations. Julian opens his thick leather portfolio and pulls out the stack of pristine legal documents I brought with me. He hands the documents directly to Trent's lawyer. "Have your client sign the bottom of page 4 and page 7. Julian says, his voice perfectly pleasant and professional. Trent continues to groan on the mat, clutching his shoulder. "Make her sign the custody surrender," Trent yells at his lawyer. "What are you waiting for? Give her the pen." Trent's lawyer looks down at the documents Julian just handed him. He adjusts his expensive glasses. He expects to read a standard parental relinquishment form. He expects to see Patricia's signed affidavit attached to the back. Instead, the lawyer's eyes widen. He reads the bold, heavy text at the top of the first page. His hands begin to tremble violently. He flips quickly to the second page, then the third. The color rapidly drains from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. He looks at Julian, then he looks at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "What is it?" Trent barks from the floor, gritting his teeth against the pane. "Read her the terms." "Sir," the lawyer stammers, his voice barely a whisper. "Sir, these are not family court documents. What are you talking about?" Trent demands, struggling to prop himself up on his good elbow. "If those are not the custody papers, what did she bring?" The lawyer swallows hard, completely ignoring his client. He stares at me with a mixture of profound awe and absolute terror. He realizes that he is not dealing with a broke single mother facing eviction. He is holding the financial death warrant of his biggest client. "Sir," the lawyer repeats, his voice shaking so badly the words barely make it out of his throat. "These are corporate takeover documents. She just initiated a hostile buyout of your entire hedge fund. She owns your debt. She owns your company." Trent freezes on the mat, the pain in his shoulder suddenly forgotten, eclipsed by a completely different kind of agony. He stares at me, his eyes wide with unadulterated horror. The dominoes have finally reached his feet. Trent screams from the mat, demanding his lawyer read the papers. The lawyer is shaking, sweating through his expensive suit. He looks down at the bleeding alpha male on the floor, and then up at me. He knows I hold the executioner's axe. Sir, the lawyer stammers, his voice cracking under the sheer weight of the financial devastation he is holding in his hands. These are not custody documents. This is a notification of a hostile corporate takeover. Obsidian Shield Holdings just purchased 51% of your outstanding corporate debt from your primary creditors. Trent stops thrashing. He stares at his lawyer, his face draining of whatever color the pain had left behind. What are you talking about? He hisses, clutching his dislocated shoulder. I do not have any debt available for purchase. My fund is secured. Your fund was secured yesterday, I correct him, stepping slightly closer to the edge of the ring. But this morning your accounts experienced a sudden and unexplained federal freeze. Wall Street hates uncertainty, Trent. When word leaked that the feds locked your assets, your creditors panicked. They wanted out before the ship sank. My acquisitions team reached out and offered them pennies on the dollar to assume your liabilities. They took the deal immediately. I lean over the ropes, looking down at the man who thought he could use his wealth to steal my daughter. You do not own your company anymore, Trent. I say, my voice echoing through the silent gym. You do not own your house. You do not own your cars. You are massively overleveraged, and I own the margin calls. I own your collateral. Effectively, I own you. Trent tries to push himself up on his good arm, but the agony in his shoulder sends him collapsing back onto the sweat-stained mat. He looks frantically at his wealthy hedge fund friends, who are still backed against the far wall. Not a single one of them steps forward to help him. In their world, weakness is contagious, and Trent is currently bleeding out on the financial operating table. You cannot do this, Trent gasps, spitting the words out through clenched teeth. I will tie you up in court for decades. I have Patricia signed affidavit. I will take Zuri. I will destroy you in family court. Julian, my corporate counsel, lets out a brief, polite chuckle. He adjusts his tie and looks down at Trent. Sir, with all due respect, you no longer have the capital to retain our legal counterparts. Your firm accounts are frozen, and your personal assets are now subject to our aggressive restructuring protocols. You cannot afford to sue my client for a parking ticket, let alone a protracted custody battle. I reach out and take my tailored blazer back from Julian. I slip it on, smoothing the lapels with deliberate, calm movements. I told you at the barbecue, I say, looking down at him one last time. I told you I would dismantle your entire life piece by piece until you had nothing left but the ashes. You should have just apologized to my daughter. I turn my back on the ring and walk toward the exit. The sound of my stiletto heels striking the polished concrete floor is the only noise in the massive warehouse space. Dozens of elite wealthy men part like the Red Sea to let me through. They avert their eyes, terrified that making eye contact might somehow draw my attention to their own fragile empires. I walk out through the heavy glass doors into the blinding Atlanta sunlight, leaving Trent humiliated, broken, and legally cornered in a cage of his own making. My security detail opens the door of my armored Escalade, and I slide into the back seat. Julian climbs into the sedan behind us, and the convoy pulls away from the curb, merging seamlessly into the chaotic midtown traffic. I let out a slow, controlled breath. The adrenaline is fading, replaced by the cold, hard calculus of what comes next. In the military, you are trained to anticipate the secondary explosion. When you hit a target, the immediate destruction is rarely the end of the engagement. The enemy regroups. They find a new angle of attack. Trent was neutralized, but he was only half of the problem. My sister Tasha was the other half, and in many ways she was far more dangerous. Tasha did not care about the business mechanics of Trent's hedge fund. She cared about the status it provided. She cared about the designer clothes, the exclusive country club memberships, and her absolute reign over the Buckhead social scene. Stripping her of that wealth was not just an inconvenience. It was a direct attack on her entire identity. She would not react with legal strategies or boardroom negotiations. She would react with pure venomous social sabotage. I pull out my encrypted phone and open the secure channel to my penthouse. My chief of security answers immediately. Zuri is safe, Major, he confirms. She is currently watching cartoons in the media room and eating the lunch you requested. Perimeter is secure. Keep her inside, I instruct him. Nobody gets on that floor without my direct authorization. I end the call and stare out the tinted window. Tasha is going to find out about the hostile takeover any minute now. Trent's lawyer will have to make that phone call and explain that their entire lifestyle just evaporated. I know my sister. She will not call me to negotiate. She will not run to our mother to cry. She will go straight for the jugular. She will target the one thing in this world that I care about more than my own life. My phone vibrates in my hand. The screen lights up with a text message from an unknown number, but I know exactly who it is. I open the message. The text reads, "You think you are so smart, Maya. You think you can mess with my husband's money and ruin my life. I am going to erase your daughter's future. You are finished." My jaw clenches. Tasha is making her move. Tasha holds a very specific type of power in Atlanta. She is the president of the Parent-Teacher Association at the Oak Ridge Academy. Oak Ridge is the most elite private elementary school in the state. It is a fortress of generational wealth and high society influence, where the children of politicians, celebrities, and corporate titans go to secure their Ivy League futures. I had quietly enrolled Zuri there 3 weeks ago, paying the exorbitant annual tuition in full using a discreet trust fund. I wanted her to have the best education possible, far away from the underfunded public schools in our old neighborhood. Zuri was scheduled to start her first day of classes tomorrow morning. My secure phone chimes again. This time it is an alert from my cyber intelligence division. They monitor all digital traffic concerning my immediate family members to predict hostile actions. I open the intelligence report. Tasha has just blasted an emergency email to the entire Oak Ridge Academy Board of Directors and the elite mothers on the PTA committee. The email is completely unhinged. She claims that I am a violent, unhinged criminal currently under federal investigation for fraud and extortion. She explicitly states that I assaulted her husband unprovoked and that bringing my daughter into the school would put every other child in immediate physical danger. She is leveraging her entire social capital, demanding that the headmaster revoke Zuri's enrollment effective immediately. She is painting me as a ghetto thug trying to infiltrate their pristine, wealthy environment. She knows exactly which racist, classist buttons to push to terrify a board of wealthy conservative parents. She is using the very stereotypes my mother weaponized against me to destroy my 7-year-old daughter's educational foundation. I tap the glass separating me from my driver. Change of plans. I say, my voice dropping into a deadly calm register. We are going to the Oak Ridge Academy. The driver nods and swings the heavy SUV across 3 lanes of traffic, taking the next exit. I look down at my phone. Tasha thinks social power is absolute. She thinks hiding behind the gated walls of a private academy makes her untouchable. She thinks she can use the PTA as a personal militia to punish my child for her husband's financial incompetence. She is about to learn that social capital is entirely dependent on keeping your dirty secrets hidden from the public eye. I dial my lead cyber operative. Connect me to the data mining team I command. I need a complete forensic audit of the Oak Ridge Academy PTA financial accounts for the last 24 months. Track every single incoming donation and outgoing expense. Cross-reference the outgoing transfers with Tasha. Personal bank accounts, her credit card statements, and Trent's hedge fund ledgers. I want every dime accounted for, and I need the report compiled and verified in the next 30 minutes. My operative does not ask questions. We are on it, Major. Tasha is hosting the annual Oak Ridge Luxury Charity Gala tonight. It is the biggest social event of the season, where the wealthiest families in Atlanta gather to outbid each other on silent auction items and congratulate themselves on their philanthropy. Tasha is expecting to be crowned Mother of the Year on stage tonight. She plans to use that spotlight to solidify her status and completely isolate me from the community. She expects me to stay home and cry over my daughter's revoked admission. She expects me to be intimidated by a ballroom full of millionaires and politicians. I lean back against the leather seat and smooth the crisp lines of my tailored suit. Tasha wanted to bring my daughter into a war zone. She just guaranteed her own absolute destruction. I am going to crash her perfect charity gala, and I am going to burn her social empire straight to the ground. I wait in the penthouse living room the next morning. Zuri is wearing her brand new Oak Ridge Academy uniform, a crisp white blouse, a navy blue blazer, and a perfectly pleated plaid skirt. She looks absolutely beautiful. She spins around, showing off her new backpack. I kiss her forehead and hand her off to my chief of security, David, for the morning school run. I stay behind in my office to finalize the aggressive acquisition of Trent's remaining assets. Less than 40 minutes later, the private elevator doors slide open with a soft chime. David steps out into the foyer holding Zuri tightly by the hand. My daughter is sobbing. Her small shoulders are shaking uncontrollably, her face buried in her hands. David looks up at me, and his face is carved from solid stone. His jaw is ticking with suppressed rage. Major David says, his voice tight and low. We were denied entry at the main gate. The headmaster had armed campus security block our vehicle. They refused to let Zuri out of the car. The headmaster personally walked up to my window and handed me this. David hands me a sealed ivory envelope embossed with the Oak Ridge Academy crest. I tear it open. It is a formal notice of immediate expulsion. It states that the board of directors has deemed our family a security risk to the student body. I look up at David, my blood turning to ice. My cyber team intercepted an emergency email broadcast sent to the entire Oak Ridge parent directory at 6 o'clock this morning, David explains, handing me a secure tablet. It was sent directly from the PTA president official account. I take the tablet and read the email. Tasha did not just pull strings to get Zuri expelled. She launched a scorched earth smear campaign designed to destroy my reputation across the entire city. Tasha used her prestigious title to blast an emergency warning to the wealthiest mothers in Atlanta. She did not hold back. She used every coded racist and classist dog whistle she could muster. Tasha warned the parents that I was a violent, unhinged criminal who had viciously assaulted a prominent community member unprovoked. She claimed I was currently under active federal investigation for extortion and severe racketeering. She explicitly stated that allowing my daughter onto the pristine campus would expose their privileged children to aggressive elements and ghetto culture. She painted me as a dangerous monster and labeled my innocent 7-year-old daughter as acceptable collateral damage. My cell phone vibrates on the glass desk. The screen lights up with a new text message from Tasha. You mess with my husband's money, I erase your daughter's future. I stare at the glowing words on the screen. Tasha thinks social power is an absolute weapon. She thinks hiding behind the gated walls of a private academy makes her untouchable. She thinks she can use the Parent-Teacher Association as a personal militia to punish my child for her husband's financial incompetence. I do not throw the phone. I do not scream. I set the device face down on the desk and walk over to my daughter. I kneel down on the imported stone floor so I am exactly at Zuri's eye level. I take my thumbs and gently wipe the tears from her warm brown cheeks. I do not give her false platitudes. I raise her to be strong. Zuri, look at me, I say, keeping my voice calm and perfectly steady. She sniffles and looks into my eyes. Why do bullies yell so loudly, Zuri? Because they are scared, Mommy, she whispers, her lip quivering. Exactly right, I say, nodding slowly. Your Aunt Tasha is terrified. She took something from you today because she has absolutely nothing left of her own. She is trying to make you feel small so she can feel big. But we do not cry over scared people. We handle them. Do you understand me? Zuri nods, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. We handle them, she repeats, her voice growing a little stronger. I stand up and kiss the top of her head. I tell David to take Zuri to the media room and put on her favorite movie. Once the heavy oak doors close behind them, the mother disappears and the Special Operations Commander takes over completely. Tasha is hosting the annual Oak Ridge Crystal Gala tonight. It is the biggest luxury charity event of the season, where the wealthiest families in Atlanta gather in ballrooms to outbid each other on silent auction items and congratulate themselves on their philanthropy. Tasha is expecting to be crowned Mother of the Year on stage tonight. She plans to use that massive spotlight to solidify her status and completely isolate me from the community. She expects me to stay home and cry over my daughter's revoked admission. She expects me to be intimidated by a ballroom full of millionaires and politicians. She has no idea what happens when you corner a trained killer and threaten her cub. I walk over to my secure server terminal and tap my earpiece, connecting directly to my lead cyber operative. Malik, I say, my voice dropping into a deadly cold register. I need a complete forensic audit of the Oak Ridge Academy PTA financial accounts for the last 24 months. We are already pulling the main ledgers. Major Malik replies, the rapid clicking of his keyboard echoing over the encrypted line. Go deeper, I instruct him. Track every single incoming donation and outgoing expense. Tasha does not do charity out of the goodness of her heart. She does it for the control and the access. Cross-reference the outgoing PTA transfers with Tasha's personal bank accounts, her luxury credit card statements, and the internal ledgers of Trent's hedge fund. Find the leak, Malik. Give me 30 minutes. Major Malik says, his tone sharp with purpose. I will have every dime accounted for and verified. I end the connection and walk into my massive walk-in closet. Tonight is not a tactical raid in a foreign desert. It is a high society execution in the heart of Buckhead. I scan the rows of designer clothing, bypassing the tactical gear and tailored business suits. I reach the very back of the closet and pull out a floor-length emerald green Tom Ford gown. The silk is heavy and immaculate. If I am going to crash a luxury gala, I am going to look like the woman who owns the building. I select a pair of diamond drop earrings and slide my feet into a pair of black Christian Louboutin stilettos. The armor is silk, but the weapon is data. Tasha wanted to play a game of absolute social destruction. She wanted to use her country club influence to erase my daughter's future. She just handed me the match, and I am bringing the gasoline. I check my reflection in the full-length mirror. My expression is completely void of mercy. It is time to crash a party. The valet at the Buckhead Grand Hotel rushes forward to open the heavy door of my armored Escalade. I step out onto the immaculate red carpet, allowing the heavy silk of my emerald green Tom Ford gown to cascade around my ankles. I do not look like a single mother scrambling for survival. I look like a woman who owns the very ground I am walking on. I bypass the velvet ropes and the guest list checkpoints with the effortless authority of a commanding officer. My security detail remains outside, forming an invisible but impenetrable perimeter around the building. Tonight I do not need armed guards to fight my battles. I am the weapon. I walk down the gilded corridor toward the main ballroom. The heavy oak double doors stand slightly open, leaking the sounds of clinking crystal and polite applause into the hallway. I push the doors fully open and step inside the massive room. The Oak Ridge Academy Crystal Gala is a masterclass in performative wealth. Massive chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over dozens of circular tables draped in white silk. Atlanta politicians, corporate executives, and the city elite are dressed in their finest attire, drinking imported champagne and patting themselves on the back for their charitable donations. At the front of the room stands a large, elevated stage flanked by two massive projection screens currently displaying smiling photographs of the Academy students. Standing center stage, bathed in a pristine white spotlight, is my sister Tasha. She is wearing a custom silver sequined gown, holding a heavy glass trophy shaped like a star. The school board chairman just handed her the Mother of the Year award. Tasha is beaming, soaking up the adoration of the wealthy crowd, completely intoxicated by her own fabricated social supremacy. I walk slowly down the center aisle. The sharp, rhythmic click of my Christian Louboutin stilettos against the polished hardwood floor cuts through the polite applause. Heads begin to turn. The wealthy donors sitting at the aisle tables look up, taking in my emerald gown and the absolute cold calculation on my face. The whispers start immediately rippling through the ballroom like a sudden change in air pressure. Tasha looks up from her trophy. Her eyes lock onto mine. The triumphant smile on her perfectly contoured face shatters instantly. The color drains from her cheeks, leaving her looking pale and terrified under the stage lights. Tasha grips the microphone stand so tightly her knuckles turn white. She panics, realizing that the woman she just tried to destroy has walked right into the heart of her fortress. She immediately resorts to the only tactic she knows. She tries to use the wealthy crowd as a shield. Security, Tasha yells into the microphone, her voice shrill and echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Security, we have an unauthorized intruder. Someone remove this woman immediately. We must protect our children from aggressive low-class influences. The ballroom goes dead silent. The blatant racist and classist dog whistles echo through the room. Tasha is banking on the elite crowd's inherent fear of outsiders to mobilize them against me. She wants them to see a dangerous ghetto threat infiltrating their pristine environment. Two burly hotel security guards in dark suits immediately step into my path, blocking the center aisle. They hold their hands out, signaling me to stop. I do not stop. I do not even slow my pace. I look the lead security guard directly in the eyes. I recognize the tactical pin on his lapel. Gentlemen, I state, my voice low but carrying absolute authority. Obsidian Shield Holdings provides the secondary threat assessment protocols for this entire hotel chain. I am the founder and CEO. If you touch me, you will not just lose your jobs tonight. You will lose your pensions and your private security licenses before you wake up tomorrow morning. Step aside. The guards hesitate. They look at my posture, my unwavering eye contact, and the undeniable command radiating from my presence. They recognize the name of my firm. They take one look at the predator walking toward them, and they immediately step aside, clearing my path to the stage. Tasha watches her defense line crumble. She starts breathing heavily, her chest heaving as she grips the microphone. Cut the music, she screams, looking frantically toward the audio-visual control booth set up to the right of the stage. Turn off the lights. Get her out of here. I do not walk up the stage stairs to argue with her. Arguing gives validation to a fool's premise. I veer slightly to the right, walking directly into the dimly lit audio-visual control booth. The young sound technician sitting behind the massive digital soundboard stands up, trying to block my access to the main console. I do not raise my voice. I reach out, grab his wrist, and execute a simple pain compliance joint manipulation. I apply just enough pressure to make his knees buckle and slide him effortlessly out of my way. I reach into my clutch and pull out the encrypted titanium flash drive Malik prepared for me. I plug it directly into the primary input port of the master control console. Tasha screams into the microphone, demanding the hotel manager intervene. I bypass the security firewalls on the soundboard in exactly 6 seconds. I hit the main projection override command. The two massive screens flanking the stage suddenly glitch. The smiling photos of the elite private school children vanish. The ballroom is plunged into a stark, bright white light as high-resolution financial documents suddenly fill the massive screens for the entire room to see. I pick up the spare wireless microphone resting on the control desk. I turn it on and walk out of the booth, stepping back into the light so every single millionaire in the room can see exactly who is burning down the house. Good evening, Oak Ridge Academy donors. I say, my voice perfectly calm, echoing powerfully from every speaker in the ballroom. My name is Maya. I am the low-class influence your PTA president just warned you about. But I am not the person stealing your money. The crowd murmurs, looking frantically from me to the screens. Tasha drops her glass trophy. It shatters against the stage floor, sending crystal shards flying everywhere. She covers the microphone with her hand, looking at the screens in absolute horror. Let us direct our attention to the visual presentation, I say, pacing slowly in front of the stage. You are looking at the verified forensic audit of the Oak Ridge Academy, Parent-Teacher Association, General Fund. I believe you all raised $200,000 last semester for the new science laboratory. If you look at the highlighted line on the left screen, you will see exactly where your generous donations actually went. The crowd gasps audibly. The screen shows a direct wire transfer from the PTA charitable account to a private offshore banking account. The next slide instantly pops up, showing the routing numbers matching a direct purchase receipt. Your science laboratory donations paid for a limited edition crocodile skin Hermes Birkin bag delivered directly to Tasha, I announce, pointing sharply at my sister, who is currently trembling on stage. You will also see payments for first-class flights to Paris luxury spa retreats in Switzerland and $50,000 in custom landscaping for her Buckhead estate. The ballroom erupts into furious whispers. Wealthy investors and powerful politicians start pointing at the screens, pulling out their phones to record the evidence. Tasha tries to unplug her microphone, but my cyber team has already locked the system. She is trapped on stage, bathed in the light of her own financial crimes. But Tasha was not just buying designer handbags. I continue, my voice cutting over the rising outrage of the crowd. I snap my fingers, and the screen shifts to a massive, highly complex financial ledger. Let us look at the real charity project she was funding. Your generous donations to the children of Atlanta were actively being used to float a fraudulent hedge fund. I point to the second screen. You are looking at a continuous stream of illicit wire transfers moving over $500,000 from the school accounts directly into a Cayman Islands shell company. That shell company is owned by Trent, the husband of your mother of the year. Tasha has been systematically bleeding this academy dry for 2 entire years to secretly cover his catastrophic margin calls and keep his failing hedge fund from drowning. She used your children's educational funds as her personal piggy bank to maintain the illusion of her own wealth. The room completely explodes. Chairs scrape loudly against the hardwood floor as angry donors jump to their feet. The school board chairman who just handed Tasha the award turns beet red and snatches the microphone stand away from her. Women in expensive gowns are shouting demanding answers. The veneer of polite high society crumbles into absolute chaos. Tasha falls to her knees on the stage, covering her face with her hands, sobbing hysterically as the elite community she worshipped turns on her like a pack of wolves. She looks down at me through her tears, her eyes begging for a mercy she never once offered me or my daughter. I stand perfectly still in my emerald gown looking back at her with eyes like ice. The dominoes are falling, and the devastation is total. The outrage in the ballroom does not just simmer, it boils over into absolute bedlam. The high society parents of Oak Ridge Academy are not the forgiving type, especially when their personal bank accounts are the ones being drained to fund another woman's vanity. The school board chairman, a silver-haired telecom executive named Harrison, snatches the microphone stand straight from the floor where it had fallen. He does not bother helping Tasha up from the stage. He steps right over her ruined silver-sequined gown. "Security, lock the doors!" Harrison booms, his voice quivering with white-hot fury. "Do not let anyone leave the control booth. We need those files preserved. I am calling the authorities right now." He looks down at my sister, who is currently curled into a pathetic ball on the hardwood stage, weeping so hard her body is violently shaking. "Tasha, you are officially stripped of your title effective immediately," Harrison announces, his tone laced with absolute disgust. "You are fired from the board. You are banned from the campus. I will personally see to it that the district attorney files grand larceny charges against you before the sun comes up." Tasha scrambles to her knees, her perfectly manicured hands desperately reaching out toward the front row of tables. Her face is a mess of running mascara and ruined contouring. She looks at the wealthy mothers she spent years trying to impress, the women she hosted for high tea and catered lunches. "Please, you have to understand." Tasha begs, her voice cracking into a shrill, hysterical whine. "It was a temporary loan. Trent was going to put the money back. We just needed a bridge to get through the quarter. I am one of you. Please do not do this to my family." The wealthy mothers do not offer her an ounce of sympathy. They recoil, pulling their designer coats tightly around their shoulders, as if Tasha's sudden poverty and criminal exposure is a highly contagious disease. They turn their backs on her, whispering furiously to their husbands and texting their own legal teams. In less than 3 minutes, the entire social empire my sister sacrificed her soul to build is vaporized. She is no longer the queen of Buckhead. She is a pariah, an exposed thief crying on a stage covered in shattered crystal. I stand perfectly still in the center aisle, letting the chaos swirl around me. In my line of work, you never interrupt an enemy while they are in the process of destroying themselves. Maya. The name is screamed with such venomous force that it momentarily cuts through the ambient noise of the panicking ballroom. I turn my head slowly. My mother, Patricia, pushes her way through the crowd of outraged donors. She is wearing a stiff golden gown, her face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. She ignores the staggering evidence of embezzlement blazing on the 2 massive projection screens. She ignores the fact that her golden child just confessed to stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from an elementary school. Patricia only sees one thing. She sees the daughter she spent 30 years trying to keep at the bottom of the food chain standing tall and victorious. Patricia marches right up to me, stopping mere inches from my face. She raises a trembling finger, pointing it directly between my eyes. "You destroyed your sister," Patricia hisses, her voice shaking with rage. "You jealous, vicious little monster. You could not stand seeing her happy. You could not stand seeing her married to a successful man while you played security guard. You have ruined her life just to make yourself feel important. You are dead to me. Do you hear me? You are absolutely dead to me." I look at the shaking finger pointed at my face. I do not swat it away. I do not step back. I look my mother dead in the eyes, my expression entirely devoid of whatever daughterly affection she might have once expected. I did not force Tasha to steal from children, I state, my voice dropping into a cold, deadly register. I did not force Trent to run a fraudulent hedge fund. I simply turned on the lights. If you are angry that your golden child is a common thief, you need to look at how you raised her. You taught her that a designer handbag mattered more than her own integrity. Patricia's face flushes a dangerous shade of crimson. She drops her hand, her fists clenching so tightly her knuckles pop. You know nothing about our world, Patricia spits out. Tasha is a vice president's wife. She has standards to maintain. She has a certain lifestyle she is obligated to uphold for Trent's clients. It was a temporary setback. We would have replaced the funds. But now you have called the authorities. You think you have won. You think you have left us with nothing. Patricia lets out a harsh, manic laugh that sounds entirely divorced from reality. She looks around at the wealthy donors calling the police, then looks back at me with a desperate, triumphant glare. You think a few $100,000 in restitution is going to sink this family? Patricia sneers, her voice dripping with venomous pride. You think Trent is finished just because his accounts are frozen. You have no idea what real generational wealth looks like, Maya. You are just a bitter outsider. I fixed Trent's financial problem this morning. I made sure my son-in-law has all the capital he needs to wipe this entire mess away by tomorrow. I narrow my eyes slightly. My tactical brain instantly scans the data I have on my mother's finances. Patricia does not have the liquid capital to bail Trent out of a multi-million-dollar margin call. Her lifestyle is heavily subsidized by the church and her credit cards. There is only one asset in our family with that kind of leverage. I feel a sudden sharp drop in the pit of my stomach. What did you do? I ask, my voice dangerously quiet. Patricia smiles, a cold, vicious expression that solidifies her complete betrayal. I transferred the deed to your father's estate, she announces, her voice ringing with absolute defiance. I signed the historic property over to Trent completely free and clear. The air leaves my lungs. My father was a cornerstone of the Atlanta African American business community. He bought that sprawling historic estate in a district where Black men were historically denied property rights. He built that house with his own hands, his own sweat and his own blood. It was not just a piece of real estate. It was a monument to Black excellence, a gathering place for civil rights leaders, and the physical embodiment of our bloodline's legacy. Before my father passed away, he made Patricia promise to keep the estate in the family forever as a sanctuary for future generations. You gave our father's legacy to Trent. I say, my voice vibrating with a lethal contained fury. You gave a historic Black estate to a white hedge fund manager who disrespects our culture, mocks my service, and stole from an elementary school. Patricia does not even flinch. Your father always said Trent was the son he never had. She lies smoothly, effortlessly, erasing my father's true values, just to keep her white son-in-law happy. Trent knows how to handle real estate. Your father would have wanted a smart businessman to capitalize on the market. Trent already found a massive commercial developer. They are closing the deal tomorrow morning. Patricia takes a step closer, her eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. The developer is paying Trent $8 million in cash to bulldoze that old dusty house and pave it over for a commercial shopping center. $8 million, Maya. That is more than enough to unfreeze Trent's accounts, pay back this stupid school, and keep Tasha in the lifestyle she deserves. You thought you cornered them. You thought you could use your little computer tricks to make them homeless. But tomorrow morning Trent will be richer than ever, and Tasha will never spend a single second inside a jail cell. Patricia turns her back on me, marching toward the stage to comfort her weeping criminal of a daughter. I stand in the middle of the ballroom, the sounds of the chaotic gala fading into a dull white noise in my ears. This is no longer a financial war. This is no longer about a dislocated shoulder at a gym or an eviction notice on an apartment door. Patricia just crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. She sold out my father's honor to buy a lifeline for a coward. Trent intends to bulldoze my family history to pay for his own incompetence. I reach into my clutch and pull out my encrypted phone. I do not look at the stage. I do not look at the screaming donors. I walk calmly out of the ballroom, leaving the burning social empire behind me. I step out into the cool Atlanta night air, my emerald gown sweeping across the pavement. My security team immediately falls in step beside me. I dial Julian, my corporate counsel. He answers on the first ring. Major Julian says. Julian, I say, my voice, absolute sub-zero ice. Trent is attempting to liquidate a specific residential property tomorrow morning to a commercial developer. Find out exactly which development corporation he is meeting with. I do not care what you have to do. Hack his lawyer's emails, bribe his broker, or pull the city zoning permits. I want the name of the buyer and the address of the closing meeting on my desk in 10 minutes. Understood, Major, Julian replies, recognizing the lethal shift in my tone. What are our parameters for this target? There are no parameters, I state, stepping into the back of my armored SUV. Trent wants to sell my father's legacy to the highest bidder to save his own skin. We are going to intercept that sale. Tell the tactical team to prep the boardroom. We are going to war. The morning sun hits the sleek glass facade of the Capstone Commercial Partners building, throwing sharp reflections across the Atlanta skyline. It is exactly 7:45 in the morning. I step out of my armored SUV wearing a tailored navy blue suit that fits like a second skin. My posture is rigid, my expression completely devoid of mercy. Julian walks in lockstep beside me, gripping his thick leather portfolio. My security detail secures the perimeter of the high-rise lobby before I even cross the threshold. We have confirmed the target room. Major Julian states, his voice low and precise as we step into the private executive elevator. Trent and your mother arrived 15 minutes ago. The closing agent is already at the table. They requested an expedited wire transfer immediately upon signing the deed. Trent is desperate. He needs the $8 million to clear his federal freeze and pay the restitution for your sister before the district attorney files the grand larceny charges this afternoon. I watch the floor numbers tick upward on the digital display. Trent thinks he found a loophole. He thinks he can liquidate the very foundation of my family history to buy his way out of a federal cage. He is about to learn that my tactical firm does not just operate in overseas war zones. We control the financial battlefields right here at home. The elevator doors slide open silently on the 50th floor. We bypass the receptionist entirely, walking straight down the carpeted corridor toward the primary boardroom. I do not knock. I push the heavy frosted glass doors open and step into the room. The scent of expensive dark roast coffee and sharp desperation fills the air. Trent is sitting at the massive mahogany table, his right arm securely strapped into a medical sling from our encounter at the gym yesterday. He looks absolutely terrible. His skin is pale and clammy, his eyes darting frantically around the room. Beside him sits my mother, Patricia, wearing a stiff designer skirt suit, clutching her pearl necklace like a rosary. At the head of the table sits Mr. Sterling, the senior closing agent for Capstone Commercial Partners. Trent snaps his head toward the door. The moment he sees me standing there, the false confidence drains entirely from his face, leaving behind pure, unfiltered panic. He practically jumps out of his leather ergonomic chair, his good hand slamming flat against the polished wood table. "Get her out of here!" Trent barks, his voice cracking with anxiety. "This is a private corporate meeting. Security should have stopped you downstairs. You have absolutely no right to be in this building, Maya." I walk slowly into the room, the sharp, rhythmic click of my heels cutting through the tense silence. I take a position directly across the table from him, resting my fingertips lightly on the cold mahogany. I do not raise my voice. I do not break eye contact. "I have every right to be here, Trent," I state calmly. "You are attempting to sell a historic property that does not belong to you. I am simply here to ensure the transaction is executed with total transparency." Patricia stands up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She steps in front of Trent, acting as a human shield for the arrogant white man who is currently trying to bulldoze her own late husband's legacy. Her face is twisted with that same toxic superiority she displayed at the gala last night. She completely ignores the fact that her other daughter is currently facing imminent arrest. She only cares about maintaining her proximity to Trent's imaginary wealth. "You are not stopping this sale," Maya, Patricia sneers, her voice dripping with venom. "The deed is legally in my name, and I transferred it to Trent. He is handling the liquidation. Your father always said Trent was the son he never had. The house is his to do with as he pleases. You are just a bitter, jealous woman who wants to see her own family suffer. I look at my mother and feel a profound, absolute disgust. My father was a proud, honorable black man who fought tooth and nail against the systemic redlining in Atlanta. He bought that sprawling estate when the banks refused to lend to people who looked like us. He built that house with his own blood and sweat, turning it into a cornerstone of our community. It was a sanctuary for civil rights leaders, a place of safety and strength. My father never viewed Trent as a son. My father tolerated Trent because Patricia demanded it. To hear my mother willingly erase my father's true values, his struggle and his immense pride, just to keep her white son-in-law happy is a betrayal so deep it permanently severs whatever fragile thread still connected us. My father built an empire for his bloodline, I reply, my voice dropping into a lethal quiet tone. He did not build it to be a massive bailout fund for a sloppy hedge fund manager who steals from elementary schools. You are selling out your own history, Patricia. It is just a dusty old house. Trent snaps, wiping sweat from his forehead with his left hand. It is a prime commercial lot, and I am capitalizing on the market. It is called smart business Maya. Something a mall cop would not understand. He turns frantically to Mr. Sterling, the closing agent. We are done talking. Let us finalize the paperwork right now. Where do I sign to execute the transfer? Mr. Sterling, a distinguished older man in a gray suit, looks at Trent, then glances briefly at me. He slides a thick stack of legal documents across the table, along with a heavy gold pen. Right here at the bottom of page 12, sir. Mr. Sterling says, his voice perfectly neutral. Once the ink hits the paper, the property rights are transferred to Capstone Commercial Partners, and the $8 million wire transfer will be authorized. Trent snatches the pen with his left hand. He is trembling with adrenaline and greed. He believes this is his ultimate victory. He believes this single signature will erase the hostile takeover, the federal freeze, and the criminal charges hovering over his wife. He looks up at me, flashing a vicious, triumphant grin. You thought you backed me into a corner, Trent spits out, placing the pen against the thick parchment paper. You thought you could take everything from me. But I always win, Maya. I am taking your father's precious little house, and I am going to turn it into a concrete parking garage. Trent signs his name with a messy, aggressive flourish. He tosses the gold pen onto the table. He pushes the signed deed across the polished mahogany, sliding it directly toward Mr. Sterling. Wire the funds immediately, Trent commands, leaning back in his chair, letting out a massive breath of relief. I step forward. I put my hand flat down on top of the deed, stopping it from reaching the closing agent. Trent frowns, his brow furrowing in confusion. What are you doing? He demands. The deal is done. The property belongs to the developer now. Take your hands off my paperwork. I look down at the signature. Then I look up at Trent. My expression is absolute sub-zero ice. You are right, Trent, I say smoothly, sliding the deed right back across the table until it rests directly in front of him. The property does belong to the developer now. I hold my hand out to Julian. My corporate counsel opens his leather portfolio and extracts a single laminated document. It is a corporate disclosure form stamped with the federal seal of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I take the document and flip it over, dropping it onto the table right next to Trent's signed deed. Trent looks down at the new piece of paper. Patricia leans over his uninjured shoulder, squinting at the dense legal text. I suggest you read the parent company information for Capstone Commercial Partners, Trent. I instruct him, my voice echoing powerfully in the quiet boardroom. Trent stares at the document. He reads the top line. Then he reads the second line. His eyes widen drastically. His jaw drops open. All the arrogant color drains from his face, leaving him looking like a corpse. He begins to shake, his left hand trembling so violently he has to grip the edge of the table to keep from collapsing out of his chair. No, Trent whispers, his voice cracking into a high-pitched wheeze. No, this is impossible. Patricia looks from the paper to Trent's horrified face. What is it? She demands, grabbing his shoulder. Trent, what does it say? Julian steps forward, adjusting his tie with a calm, professional smile. It says, Patricia, that Capstone Commercial Partners is not an independent development firm. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Obsidian Shield Holdings. Julian points directly at me. My client is the founder and sole proprietor of Obsidian Shield Holdings. Julian clarifies, his tone dripping with formal execution. You did not sell the historic estate to a random commercial developer, Trent. You just sold it directly to Maya. The silence in the boardroom is absolute. It is the heavy, suffocating silence of total destruction. Trent realizes he did not escape the trap. He just walked right into the center of it and locked the door behind himself. He just handed the deed of my father's legacy right back into my hands. But I am not finished pulling the trigger. The corporate acquisition is only the first half of the execution. The second half is going to put him in federal prison. Trent stares at the corporate disclosure form as if the thick parchment paper has suddenly caught fire. His good hand shakes violently against the polished mahogany table. He reads the words again and again, his brain completely short-circuiting under the sheer magnitude of his own stupidity. You own the development company, he whispers, his voice a hollow, raspy wheeze. You are the buyer. I do not blink. I do not offer a single ounce of comfort. I am the buyer. Trent, I say, leaning forward slightly, which means you just sat in a boardroom and attempted to sell my own family history back to me for $8 million. Patricia looks frantically between the two of us. Her designer suit suddenly looks entirely too large for her shrinking frame. What does this mean? She demands, her voice shrill and panicky. If Maya owns the company, then we just take her money instead. The transaction is still valid. The deed is signed. We are still walking out of here with $8 million. Tell your closing agent to authorize the wire transfer right now, Maya. I am your mother, and I demand you finish this transaction. I look at the woman who gave birth to me. I see absolutely nothing but toxic entitlement and profound delusion. She genuinely believes she can command the battlefield after she has already surrendered her sword. You are not walking out of here with a single dime. Patricia, I say, my voice dropping into a deadly quiet register. And that deed sitting in front of you is not worth the ink Trent just wasted on it. Trent jerks his head up, his bloodshot eyes locking onto mine. What are you talking about? He spits out. The deed is perfectly legal. Your mother signed the property over to me yesterday. I have the county records. I have the tax assessments. You cannot back out of a signed contract just because you own the subsidiary company. I will sue you for breach of contract. I will drag your firm into litigation for the next decade. I let out a slow, chilling laugh. It echoes off the high-rise glass windows, filling the boardroom with absolute authority. You cannot sue anyone, Trent, because you do not own the property. Patricia never owned the property. Patricia slams her hand on the table, her face twisting into an ugly scowl. You are lying, she shrieks. Your father left everything to me. I was his wife. I stood by him while he built his empire. He left me the entire estate in his primary will. I saw the documents with my own eyes. You saw exactly what he wanted you to see. I correct her, stepping away from the table and pacing slowly toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. My father was a brilliant man. He loved you, Patricia, but he never trusted your obsession with high society. He knew you cared more about country club memberships and designer labels than you did about the community he fought to uplift. I knew that the moment he passed away, you would look for the fastest way to cash out his legacy, just to buy a seat at a table with people who do not even respect you. I turn back to face them, my expression carved from solid ice. So he set a trap, I explain, watching the color drain from my mother's face. He drafted a decoy deed. He placed it in his primary estate portfolio, knowing you would snatch it up the second the ink was dry on his death certificate. He gave you the bank accounts, the luxury cars, and the life insurance because he knew that was all you ever really wanted. But the estate, the land he bought when the banks refused to lend to black men, the sanctuary he built for our bloodline, he protected it. Julian, my corporate counsel, steps forward. He opens his leather portfolio and extracts a heavy document bound with a thick navy blue ribbon. He places it squarely in the center of the boardroom table. This is a federal military blind trust, Julian states, his voice crisp and relentless. Your late husband established this trust 10 years ago, Patricia. It supersedes any traditional civilian will. The true deed to the estate was locked inside this trust, and it came with a highly specific vesting requirement. The property could only be legally transferred to a direct descendant who served their country in active military duty. It legally unlocks only upon the presentation of a DD 214 document with an honorable discharge. Julian taps the heavy document with his index finger. My client Major Maya submitted her classified discharge papers to the federal trustees 3 years ago, Julian continues. The historic estate legally vested to her name the very same day. You have been living in a house that you do not own, Patricia. And the deed you transferred to Trent yesterday was nothing more than a worthless piece of decorative paper. Patricia collapses back into her ergonomic chair. Her mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. The grand illusion of her wealth, the absolute certainty of her superiority, is completely annihilated. She just realized she traded her only daughter for a fake piece of real estate and a son-in-law who is about to go to federal prison. Trent is hyperventilating. His chest heaves against his medical sling. He looks at the fake deed sitting in front of him. He looks at Mr. Sterling, the senior closing agent, who has been sitting silently at the head of the table, observing the entire execution. Mr. Sterling slowly stands up. He adjusts his suit jacket and reaches for his briefcase. Attempting to sell a property you do not own is a serious matter, Mr. Sterling says, his voice radiating professional disgust. But bringing a forged or decoy deed across state lines to a federally regulated commercial entity and attempting to execute an $8 million wire transfer elevates this from a civil dispute to a major criminal offense. Trent stares at the closing agent, his eyes wide with unadulterated terror. What are you saying? Trent stammers. I am saying you just committed federal real estate fraud and wire fraud, Mr. Sterling replies, snapping his briefcase shut. As a licensed fiduciary, I am legally obligated to report this transaction to the authorities immediately. You tried to defraud a major corporation, sir. You will be hearing from the Federal Bureau of Investigation before the end of the business day. Mr. Sterling walks right past Trent and exits the boardroom without a backward glance. The heavy glass doors swing shut, leaving the three of us locked in a suffocating cage of Trent's own making. The walls are closing in on him. The slick, arrogant hedge fund manager persona entirely vaporizes. He is no longer the wealthy elite savior my mother worshipped. He is a broke, desperate criminal facing decades in a federal penitentiary. Trent turns on Patricia, his face contorting into a mask of pure feral rage. You stupid, arrogant woman, he screams, spit flying from his lips. You told me the house was yours. You told me this deal was bulletproof. You dragged me into a federal fraud case. I am going to lose everything because you were too stupid to read your own husband's will. Do not you dare raise your voice to me, Patricia shrieks back, her pristine image shattering completely. I gave you that deed to save your worthless company. You were supposed to be a financial genius. You were supposed to fix this. Tasha is facing jail time because of your margin calls. You ruined my family. They tear into each other like starving wolves. The alliance built on racism, classism, and fragile egos dissolves into ugly, vicious screaming. They have nothing left to shield them from the reality of their own failures, so they turn their venom on each other. I watch them tear themselves apart. I do not feel an ounce of pity. I feel absolute total vindication. I step forward, bringing my hand down hard on the mahogany table. The sharp crack echoes like a gunshot, silencing their pathetic bickering. You ruined yourselves, I state, my voice radiating absolute command. You thought you could use my daughter as leverage. You thought you could erase my father's legacy to cover your own incompetence. I told you I would leave you with nothing but ashes. The fire is done, Trent. You are finished. Trent looks at me. The panic in his eyes shifts. The desperation hits a critical terminal velocity and mutates into something dark, dangerous, and entirely unhinged. The law is dead to him. His money is gone. His reputation is ash. He realizes that maneuvering through courtrooms and boardrooms is no longer an option because I control the board. He loses his mind. Trent sweeps his good arm across the table, sending the expensive coffee cups, the fake deed, and the gold pens smashing against the glass wall. He lets out a primal, guttural roar of absolute fury. He lunges across the table, grabbing the collar of my tailored suit. Julian moves to intervene, but I hold up my hand, stopping my lawyer in his tracks. I do not break eye contact with Trent. I let him hold my lapel. I want to see exactly how far his cowardice will go. You think this is over? Maya Trent snarls, his breath hot and rancid against my face. You think you can take my money and walk away? I am going to make you bleed for this. I do not care about the police anymore. I do not care about the feds. I am going to find you when you do not have your corporate lawyers standing behind you. I am going to make you wish you died in the desert. He releases my suit, shoving me backward before storming toward the boardroom doors. He kicks the heavy glass open and marches down the corridor, leaving Patricia weeping uncontrollably at the table. I smooth my lapel, looking at the empty doorway. Trent just abandoned the corporate battlefield. He has decided to escalate this to physical violence. He thinks stepping outside the law gives him the advantage. He has absolutely no idea that he just invited a special operations commander to a street war. He wants to bring the fight to the shadows. I am going to introduce him to the dark. The evening air in Atlanta carries a thick, suffocating humidity, but the atmosphere inside the VIP parking garage of the Midtown restaurant feels entirely, completely dead. It is just past 9 o'clock. I am holding Zura's small hand in mine. We just finished a quiet celebratory dinner. She is swinging a takeout bag of double chocolate cake, humming a song she learned at school, completely oblivious to the fact that her mother just dismantled a financial empire earlier this afternoon. She is safe and she is happy. That is the only metric of success that matters to me. We walk toward the isolated corner of the underground concrete structure where my armored Cadillac Escalade is parked. My private security detail is currently securing the upper perimeter, allowing us a brief moment of normal family time. It is a calculated risk, but I know the exact structural layout of this garage. I know the blind spots. I know the exits. The rhythmic clicking of my heels echoes sharply against the concrete walls. Suddenly, the echoing stops. It is replaced by the heavy scuffing of rubber soles moving rapidly out of the shadows. 4 men step out from behind the massive concrete pillars, completely blocking the path to my vehicle. They are wearing dark clothes and pulling medical masks up over their faces. They are not elite operatives. They are cheap underground fixers. I instantly analyze their tactical posture. Their stances are wide and sloppy. Their center of gravity is completely off. 2 of them have their hands shoved deeply into their jacket pockets, indicating concealed firearms. They are expecting a terrified, wealthy woman in a designer suit. They are expecting me to scream and drop my purse. Trent has officially crossed the absolute point of no return. He went from a pathetic, greedy relative throwing a temper tantrum in a boardroom to an active, lethal threat to my 7-year-old daughter. He crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Mommy Zuri whispers, her small hand tightening around my fingers, her voice trembling slightly as the 4 large men begin to encircle us. Do not look at them, baby. I say, my voice remaining completely calm and soothing, void of any panic. Keep your eyes on the car. We are exactly 5 feet away from the heavy ballistic steel door of the Escalade. I pull the digital transponder from my pocket, and the vehicle unlocks with a sharp, heavy mechanical clack. I open the heavy rear door. Get inside, Zuri, I instruct her, keeping my body positioned squarely between my child and the approaching threats. Put on your noise-canceling headphones and watch your movie. Do not look out the window. I am going to have a very quick conversation with these gentlemen. Zuri scrambles into the back seat, clutching her cake. I slam the heavy door shut. The custom locking mechanism engages, instantly sealing the cabin. The glass is rated to stop armor-piercing rounds. The chassis is reinforced with military-grade steel. My daughter is now sitting inside an impenetrable fortress. She is absolutely untouchable. I turn around slowly, smoothing the front of my tailored suit jacket. The 4 men close the distance. The leader, a large man with a thick neck and a jagged scar over his left eyebrow, pulls a heavy semi-automatic pistol from his jacket. He does not aim it to kill. He aims it at a downward angle meant to intimidate. It is a fatal tactical error. If you pull a weapon, you use it. You never display a firearm just to strike fear into an opponent who knows how to take it away from you. Grab her purse, the leader barks to the man on his right. And get the kid out of the car. The boss said we need leverage to make her sign the papers. The man on the right lunges forward, reaching aggressively for my shoulder. The Special Operations Major officially clocks in. I do not step backward. I step directly into his personal space, eliminating his striking distance. I bring my left forearm up in a brutal sweeping motion, breaking his extended grip. In the exact same fraction of a second, I drive the heel of my right palm directly upward into the base of his chin. The impact snaps his head back with a sickening crunch. His eyes roll back into his skull and he drops to the concrete like a sack of dead weight, instantly unconscious. The other three men freeze for exactly 1 second. That 1 second of hesitation is all the time I need. The leader raises his pistol, pulling the trigger mechanism back. I pivot sharply on my heel, dropping my center of mass beneath his line of sight. I grab his extended wrist with both hands, applying maximum torque while stepping my right leg behind his knee. The brutal Krav Maga takedown violently snaps his wrist outward, forcing him to drop the weapon. As he falls, I deliver a devastating knee strike squarely to his ribcage. The sound of fracturing bone echoes loudly through the parking garage. He collapses, gasping desperately for air, his weapon clattering harmlessly away across the concrete. The third man tries to flank me, pulling a tactical hunting knife from his belt. He slashes wildly, leaving his entire right side completely exposed. I sidestep the clumsy blade, grabbing his upper arm and using his own forward momentum to hurl him face first into the thick steel door of my armored SUV. He hits the ballistic glass with a loud thud and crumples to the floor, his nose completely shattered. The fourth man watches his entire crew get dismantled in less than 15 seconds by a woman in a business suit. Panic overrides his adrenaline. He turns around and tries to sprint back toward the shadows. I do not let him run. I sprint 3 steps forward and launch a driving roundhouse kick directly into the back of his knee joint. His leg buckles violently under his own weight, and he crashes hard onto the pavement, scraping his face against the rough ground. The entire engagement lasts exactly 42 seconds. The parking garage falls deathly silent, broken only by the pathetic groans of 4 grown men writhing in agony on the cold concrete. My breathing is steady, my heart rate is controlled, my suit is not even wrinkled. I walk slowly back to the leader, who is clutching his shattered ribs and gasping for breath. I step my heel firmly onto the center of his chest, pinning him to the floor. I lean down, staring directly into his terrified eyes. "Who sent you?" I demand, my voice a low, lethal whisper that promises absolute destruction. The man groans, trying to pry my heel off his chest, but his broken wrist is completely useless. I apply a fraction more pressure. He gasps, coughing up a speck of blood. A guy named Trent, the leader, squeals, his voice a pathetic, high-pitched wheeze. "A rich white guy. He paid us 50 grand in cash. He said you ruined his life. He said if we roughed you up and threatened your kid, you would sign the property deeds back over to his mother-in-law. He said you were just a scared single mother. Please, lady, I swear we were just supposed to scare you." I lift my foot off his chest. Trent actually thought he could hire cheap street muscle to intimidate a woman who spent her 20s hunting high-value targets in hostile foreign territories. He thought his hedge fund money could buy him a victory in the dark. He is a coward, hiding behind hired guns because he is too weak to fight his own battles. He brought violence to my doorstep and aimed it directly at my child. I do not call the Atlanta Police Department. Law enforcement is for civil disputes and legal processing. This is no longer a legal dispute. This is a sanctioned act of war. I pull my encrypted satellite phone from my pocket and dial a highly secure internal frequency. The line connects instantly. "David," I say, staring down at the groaning men on the pavement. "Yes, Major." David answers, his voice sharp and alert. "Clean up aisle 4 in the VIP parking garage," I instruct him. "I have 4 hostile packages ready for immediate extraction and processing. Turn them over to our federal contacts for attempted kidnapping and armed assault." "Understood," Major David replies. "My strike team is 30 seconds out. What is your current status?" "My status is fully operational," I state, smoothing the lapels of my navy blue suit jacket. "I want you to mobilize the entire Alpha Squad. Full tactical dress. Meet me at the Buckhead Country Club in 20 minutes. Trent wanted to play war. He wanted to use my daughter as leverage to get his fragile ego back. Let us bring the front line directly to his front door." I end the call and slip the phone back into my pocket. The heavy metal doors of the parking garage stairwell burst open as my elite security operatives flood the zone, swarming the injured men on the floor with zip ties and tactical efficiency. I do not look back at the mercenaries. I walk to the driver's side of my armored Escalade and slide behind the wheel. I look in the rearview mirror. Zuri is sitting safely in the back, playing a game on her tablet, completely undisturbed. "Everything okay, Mommy?" she asks, pulling one of her headphones off her ear. "Everything is perfectly fine, my love." I smile at her, putting the massive SUV into drive. "We are just going to make one more quick stop tonight. Mommy has to deliver a message to your uncle." I press the accelerator and the armored vehicle surges forward, climbing the concrete ramp toward the street level. Trent and Tasha are currently hiding behind the velvet ropes of their elite country club, desperately trying to salvage their ruined social standing by begging their rich friends for bailout loans. They think they are safe, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and valet parking. They have no idea that hell is currently driving up their private driveway. "I will snap your arm in half." My brother-in-law. Trent sneered the words as he hurled a pair of heavy mixed martial arts gloves straight at my chest. He was fully prepared to hospitalize me right there on the patio, all while my terrified 7-year-old daughter watched. He thought he was dealing with a weak, defenseless single mother. He had no idea he had just threatened a combat veteran and woken up a special operations major. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. I am Maya, 33 years old, and for years I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. The Georgia heat was oppressive that afternoon, but the atmosphere on my mother Patricia upscale Buckhead patio was even more suffocating. It was her annual Juneteenth barbecue, an event that was supposed to celebrate freedom and community, but in my family, it was just another stage for my mother to flaunt her wealth and her golden child, my older sister Tasha. Tasha had secured her place as the favorite by marrying Trent, a former college wrestler turned hedge fund executive who treated everyone around him like peasants. Trent was white, wealthy, and profoundly arrogant, a combination my status-obsessed mother worshipped. I had spent the afternoon keeping my head down and staying near the shallow end of the custom infinity pool, where my 7-year-old daughter Zuri was happily floating in her bright pink inner tube. The peace shattered the moment Trent's 10-year-old son decided the pool belonged solely to him. He charged at the edge of the water and deliberately shoved Zuri from behind, sending her tumbling out of her tube and into the deep end. The splash was loud, but the sudden silence from my daughter was deafening. She went under, swallowing water, her small hands thrashing blindly above the surface. Panic spiked through my veins, but my military training overrode the fear instantly. I did not scream. I moved. I hit the water fully clothed, grabbed Zuri by her waist, and hauled her coughing and sputtering onto the expensive imported tile of the pool deck. She was shaking violently, clinging to my soaking wet blouse, crying out for me. I held her tight, rubbing her back until her breathing leveled out. Once I knew she was safe, I stood up and turned to Trent's son, who was standing a few feet away laughing. I kept my voice perfectly level, but lined with absolute authority. "Do not ever put your hands on my daughter again. If you cannot play safely, you will not play in this pool at all." It was a standard parental correction, a basic boundary any reasonable adult would support. But Trent was not a reasonable adult. He had been holding court by the outdoor bar, boasting to his rich frat boy friends about his latest financial conquest. Hearing me discipline his son, he slammed his whiskey glass down so hard the crystal nearly shattered. He marched across the patio, his face flushed red with alcohol and misplaced ego. "Do not you dare talk to my son, you broke loser!" Trent bellowed, his voice carrying over the smooth jazz playing from the outdoor speakers. I was a large man built thick from his college wrestling days, and he used his physical size to intimidate people. He stopped just inches from my face, invading my personal space, trying to force me to step back. I did not move a single inch. "Your son just pushed Zuri into the deep end," I stated, maintaining unwavering eye contact. I corrected him because apparently no one else in this family will teach him basic discipline. Trent let out a harsh, mocking laugh that drew the attention of every guest in the yard. "Discipline? He scoffed loudly, looking me up and down, taking in my soaking wet clothes. You think because you wear a cheap uniform and walk around an empty mall all day, you know something about discipline. You are nothing, Maya. You are a glorified rent-a-cop who relies on your mother for free food on holidays. My daughter was still crying, hiding behind my wet legs, her small fingers gripping the fabric of my trousers. The disrespect was a physical weight in the air, but I kept my breathing steady. I had faced hostile insurgents in the mountains of Afghanistan. A loudmouth finance bro in linen shorts did not even register on my threat radar. But before I could formulate a response that would not end with him unconscious on the pavement, my mother, Patricia, came storming out of the house. She was wearing a pristine white designer dress, her hair styled to perfection, her face contoured in a mask of absolute outrage. But that outrage was not directed at the man screaming at her daughter, or the boy who had just nearly drowned her granddaughter. Her fury was pointed entirely at me. Maya, apologize to Trent right now, Patricia demanded, her voice shrill and commanding. You are ruining my Juneteenth celebration. You always have to be the center of attention and cause a scene. Mom, he just threatened me after his son pushed Zuri into the deep end, I replied, my voice tight with disbelief. She is soaking wet and shaking. I do not care about your exaggerations, Patricia snapped, waving her manicured hand dismissively. Tasha married a vice president. Trent provides for this family. Hai is building a legacy. And what are you? You are a glorified mall security guard who cannot even buy a house in a decent neighborhood. Do not you dare embarrass us in front of these guests. You should be grateful we even let you through the gates today. The betrayal stung more than the insult. She knew I had served in the military. She knew I had deployed overseas. But to Patricia, military service was a poor person job, a failure to secure a wealthy husband like Tasha did. She had deliberately reduced my career to mall security, to appease Trent's ego, and to keep her country club friends from asking uncomfortable questions. Tasha sauntered over at that exact moment, a mimosa in her hand, looking like she had just stepped off a magazine cover. She stood next to her husband, linking her arm through his, sending me a look of pure, unadulterated smugness. You really are exhausting, Maya, Tasha drawled, taking a slow sip of her drink. Trent is just blowing off steam. You are so defensive. Maybe if you spent less time trying to be tough and more time acting like a normal woman, you would not be raising that child by yourself in a rented apartment. Trent, emboldened by his wife and mother-in-law, unwavering support, took a step back and walked over to a nearby gym bag resting on a lounger. He had brought his gear to show off to a personal trainer he had invited to the party. He reached into the bag, pulled out a pair of heavy mixed martial arts sparring gloves, and turned back to face me. You want to act like a tough guy? Maya, Trent sneered, his chest puffed out with toxic bravado. You want to police my family. Let us see how tough you are. He hurled the heavy leather gloves straight at my chest. I will snap your arm in half, sign a waiver, and step on the grass with me right now. I will put you in the hospital in front of your kid and teach you exactly where you belong in the food chain. Zuri whimpered, pressing her face into the back of my knees. The entire patio had gone dead silent. The guests were staring, waiting to see if I would cry, if I would run away humiliated, if I would apologize to keep the peace. They expected a weak, defenseless mother broken by poverty and familial rejection. They expected me to lower my head and walk away in shame. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I did not flinch when the gloves flew through the air. My reflexes, honed by years of elite combat training, kicked in instantly. I reached out and caught the heavy leather gloves mid-flight, the smack of the impact echoing sharply in the quiet yard. I held them for a brief second, feeling the weight of the leather, the weight of their combined arrogance. I turned my head slowly, looking at the massive custom-built charcoal grill smoking a few feet away, without breaking eye contact with Trent. I extended my arm and casually dropped his expensive custom MMA gloves directly onto the glowing red-hot coals. The smell of burning leather and melting foam rose immediately into the humid Georgia air. Trent's mouth fell open in shock. Tasha gasped, spilling her mimosa on her designer shoes. Patricia's face turned an alarming shade of purple as she struggled to find words to condemn my blatant disrespect. I stepped forward, closing the distance between Trent and myself until I was standing well within his striking range. I kept my posture relaxed, my hands loose and ready at my sides, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm that carried perfectly over the crackling of his burning gloves. "You have exactly 24 hours to apologize to my daughter Trent," I said, enunciating every single syllable with chilling precision. "If you do not, I will not just break your arm. I will dismantle your entire life piece by piece until you have nothing left but the ashes." Trent tried to laugh it off, trying to maintain his tough guy persona for his friends, but I saw the brief flicker of genuine hesitation in his eyes. He opened his mouth to insult me again, but I did not give him the chance. I turned around, scooped my soaking wet daughter into my arms, and walked straight through the pristine house, leaving a trail of pool water across my mother-expensive hardwood floors. I did not look back as I walked out the front door and secured Zuri in her car seat. I drove away from the sprawling Buckhead estate, feeling a cold, calculating focus settle over my mind. They thought they had won. They thought they could bully me into submission and laugh about it over expensive wine. But the clock was officially ticking. The heavy tires of my armored SUV gripped the immaculate paved driveway of the Buckhead Pinnacle Club. This is the most exclusive country club in the entire state of Georgia, a fortress of old money and generational wealth, where men like Trent retreat when they need to call in favors. Tonight, Trent and Tasha are hosting a desperate last-ditch networking dinner in the private conservatory room. They are utterly bankrupt, socially ruined, and legally cornered, but they are still trying to play the game. They invited a dozen high-net-worth investors begging for emergency bridge loans to cover their mounting legal fees and flee the federal freeze on their accounts. They think they can charm their way out of a financial grave. I bring the vehicle to a smooth stop right at the valet stand. I turn around and look at Zuri, who is completely engrossed in her cartoon, wearing her noise-canceling headphones. My secondary security team steps out of the trailing vehicle, instantly forming a protective ring around my SUV. David leans down to my window. He confirms that the local authorities and the federal agents are exactly 2 minutes away. I leave Zuri safely locked in the mobile fortress with 4 armed operatives standing guard. I step out onto the pristine cobblestone driveway. I am still wearing my tailored navy blue suit, the fabric unblemished despite the physical combat in the parking garage just 20 minutes ago. I adjust my lapels, feeling the cool night air against my skin. Behind me, the heavy doors of 2 black transport vans slide open. 12 men and women step out, moving with absolute lethal precision. This is Alpha Squad. They are not wearing standard security uniforms. They are dressed in immaculate dark suits, their posture projecting overwhelming, intimidating power. We do not wait for the valet. We do not stop at the reception desk. I walk through the massive mahogany double doors of the country club, flanked by my elite team. The wealthy patrons in the main lounge freeze in their tracks, holding their expensive scotch glasses in midair. They part instantly, stepping back against the mahogany-paneled walls, as I lead my squad straight down the corridor toward the private conservatory room. I push the heavy double doors open and step inside. The room is dimly lit with crystal chandeliers radiating a soft golden glow over a long dining table. Trent is standing at the head of the table holding a glass of wine, sweating profusely as he tries to pitch a group of skeptical older men. Tasha is sitting beside him wearing a forced, desperate smile, her hands trembling in her lap. My mother. Patricia is seated at the far end, desperately clinging to her last shred of proximity to wealth, nodding along to Trent's frantic lies. Trent freezes mid-sentence. The wine glass slips from his fingers and shatters against the expensive Persian rug. Tasha gasps, jumping out of her chair. Patricia turns pale, her eyes wide with unadulterated terror as she takes in the 12 intimidating operatives fanning out to secure every exit in the room. What is the meaning of this? Trent stammers, his voice cracking completely. He clutches his dislocated shoulder, stepping backward until his spine hits the wood-paneled wall. You cannot be here, Maya. This is a private event. I do not raise my voice. I walk slowly down the length of the dining table, the sharp click of my heels cutting through the dead silence of the room. The wealthy investors look at me, and then look at the highly trained squad securing the doors. They instinctively slide their chairs back, distancing themselves from Trent. You sent 4 armed men to a parking garage to threaten my 7-year-old daughter, Trent. I state, my voice a low, deadly vibration that chills the air in the room. Tasha lets out a strangled cry. Patricia covers her mouth with both hands, shaking her head in denial. Trent turns a sickly shade of gray. He tries to deny it, but the words die in his throat. I reach into my jacket pocket and pull out a thick manila envelope. I drop it squarely onto the center of the dining table. The heavy thud echoes like a gavel striking wood. I do not make empty accusations. I say, looking directly at the investors who are now staring at the envelope. Inside that folder are the encrypted wire transfer receipts proving that Trent funneled $50,000 from a hidden offshore account to a local mercenary crew just 3 hours ago. You will also find the sworn written confessions of those 4 men who are currently sitting in federal custody. They provided explicit details of your murder-for-hire plot. Trent begins to hyperventilate. His chest heaves violently, and he looks frantically toward the service doors, but my operatives are already blocking the path. But I am not finished. I continue pulling a second envelope from my jacket and dropping it right next to the first. Because if attempted murder is not enough to deter your potential investors, I brought the comprehensive federal audit of your primary hedge fund. The wealthy men at the table lean forward, their eyes fixed on the documents. Trent did not just make a few bad trades, I announced, my voice ringing with absolute authority. He has been operating a massive Ponzi scheme for the last 4 years. He used the funds from new investors to pay off the dividends of his oldest clients while skimming millions off the top to fund his personal lifestyle. The federal government did not just freeze his accounts because of a glitch. They froze them because he is running a criminal syndicate. The investors stand up simultaneously, their chairs scraping loudly against the floor. They look at Trent with absolute disgust, realizing they were minutes away from handing millions of dollars to a violent, desperate fraud. "This is a lie," Trent screams, tears of panic streaming down his flushed face. "She is crazy. She is a violent military thug. Do not listen to her." Red and blue emergency lights suddenly flash through the massive conservatory windows, casting a chaotic glare across the crystal chandeliers. The sound of heavy sirens wails outside, piercing through the quiet exclusivity of the country club. The heavy doors of the conservatory swing open. 8 federal agents wearing tactical windbreakers storm into the room, badges flashing in the dim light. "I tipped them off an hour ago," I say, stepping back to give the federal agents a clear path. Trent collapses to his knees. The false bravado, the racist arrogance, the toxic superiority, all of it vaporizes in a single instant. He begins to sob violently, a loud, pathetic wailing that echoes off the walls. The federal agents do not hesitate. They grab him by his uninjured arm, hoist him to his feet, and slam him against the mahogany wall. The sharp metallic click of handcuffs snapping around his wrists sounds like absolute poetry. Tasha screams, reaching out for her husband, but a federal agent blocks her path. She is left standing alone in the middle of the room, her reputation, her wealth, and her entire identity completely destroyed. The elite investors rush out of the room, desperate to distance themselves from the radioactive fallout. Trent is dragged out through the double doors, his expensive shoes dragging across the floor, his sobs fading down the corridor. Patricia falls to her knees on the Persian rug. The weight of her catastrophic choices finally crushes the breath from her lungs. She looks up at me, her makeup running down her face in dark, ugly streaks. She abandoned the only daughter who actually possessed true power, true wealth, and true honor. She threw away her own flesh and blood to worship a criminal who nearly got her granddaughter killed. "Maya, please," Patricia begs, her voice a pathetic, broken whisper. She crawls forward, reaching out to touch the hem of my trousers. "Please forgive me. I did not know. I was blinded. You are my daughter. You have to help us. We have nothing left." I look down at the woman who gave birth to me. I see a stranger who sold her soul for a zip code and a designer handbag. "You wanted a security guard, Mom," I say, my voice perfectly calm, completely devoid of any remaining affection. "Consider me the one who just escorted you out of my life." I turn my back on her. I do not look at Tasha, who is shivering in the corner. I walk out of the conservatory, my alpha squad falling into a flawless tactical formation behind me. We march down the corridor and exit the country club, leaving the ruins of a toxic family burning in our wake. The cool night air is refreshing as I step outside. My driver has the Escalade running. I open the heavy rear door and slide into the back seat next to Zuri. She takes off her headphones and smiles at me, offering me a bite of her chocolate cake. I take a small bite and pull her into a tight, warm embrace, burying my face in her hair. "Take us home, David," I instruct my chief of security. We drive away from the flashing police lights, navigating through the quiet Atlanta streets until we reach the private iron gates of my father's historic estate. My firm finalized the full restoration just weeks ago, preserving every original brick and oak beam that my father built with his own hands. The massive iron gates swing open, welcoming us into a sprawling illuminated sanctuary of Black excellence and generational strength. I carry Zuri inside, walking through the grand foyer, filled with love, warmth, and absolute security. The toxic noise of my past is gone forever. I have my wealth, my daughter's safety, my father's true legacy, and ultimate untouchable peace. The greatest lesson I learned is that blood does not guarantee loyalty, and family is not a free pass for abuse. For years, I let their toxic expectations define my worth, shrinking myself to make them comfortable. But true power arrives the moment you realize you do not need a seat at their table because you can build your own empire. You cannot control how people treat you, but you absolutely control what you tolerate. Share your own story of protecting your peace in the comments below, and please like and subscribe for more empowering journeys.